Hibiki suddenly snaps awake in the middle of a random grassy plain and immediately has to run for his absolute life. Why? Because a terrifyingly deadly horned rabbit monster is right on his tail, ready to skewer him at any second.
While sprinting away, he makes a desperate move and activates his Appraiser skill to check the monster's stats. But doing that completely breaks his focus, making him trip over some grass and faceplant right in front of the beast. Meanwhile, an elf named Imalia suddenly receives a mysterious message straight from the heavens. It confuses her so badly that she actually breaks down crying hysterically because she has absolutely no idea what she's supposed to do about it. Back to Hibiki, he tries to pull up his world map screen to navigate, but his heart just sinks when he remembers he has a terrible sense of direction. So that super advanced map basically ends up being completely useless to him. After walking around for an entire day until the sun goes down, he finally stumbles upon a small path. But he just collapses from exhaustion and gets even more confused when the system suddenly slaps him with an official title for being a stranded castaway.
Before he can even process that weird new title, he gets massive goosebumps. A huge shadow of a giant wolf looms right behind him, totally ready to pounce on its exhausted and defenseless prey.
Thank goodness for perfect timing. A magic arrow shoots out of nowhere and takes down the wolf in one hit. Then Imalia steps out and approaches him, casting some handy translation magic so the two of them can actually understand each other.
Hibiki stares at Imalia's pointy ears and is absolutely convinced she's just wearing some high-quality cosplay props. He hasn't quite grasped that he's talking to a literal, real-life elf in a completely foreign world. When Imalia realizes exactly where they are, she nearly has a heart attack. She just can't believe a human as squishy and weak as Hibiki was crazy enough to wander alone through a grassy plain crawling with deadly, vicious monsters. Still feeling a bit suspicious, Hibiki stealthily activates his Appraiser skill again. But all the color instantly drains from his face when her status screen reveals that this gorgeous elf is actually 56 years old. Imalia goes on to explain just how sneaky and dangerous the monsters around here are. Then, out of nowhere, she pulls Hibiki into a super tight hug. She's just so overwhelmingly relieved and feels so bad for this little kid who somehow managed to survive this long. When night falls, Hibiki is just sitting there looking totally defeated, dreading his current situation. To break the awkward silence, Imalia sweetly steps in and hands him a warm cup of tea to help calm his racing thoughts. Right in the middle of their cozy little chat, Hibiki casually asks what country they're currently in. The question catches Imalia so off guard that she does a massive spit take, spraying her tea right onto Hibiki's innocent-looking face. Hibiki quickly wipes his soaking wet face, and then it finally hits him. After hearing Imalia explain the local kingdom, he goes completely silent, fully realizing that he is genuinely stranded in an alternate world called Habrastia. Seeing how incredibly depressed Hibiki looks about his fate, Imalia gives him a gentle smile and offers to personally escort him safely to the nearest city. That single offer instantly takes a massive weight right off Hibiki's shoulders. While watching over Hibiki as he sleeps peacefully with that innocent expression, Imalia starts to wonder. She genuinely thinks this weirdly dressed guy might actually be a precious gift sent directly to her by the nature spirits. As soon as Imalia drifts off to sleep, the area gets completely quiet, until a mysterious, ethereal voice suddenly echoes out, thanking her. It's a magical sign that her kind decision to help him was absolutely the right move. Meanwhile, Hibiki's mind drifts back to his past. He dreams of a peaceful memory back in Japan, where he's just chilling, sipping tea, and having a great time joking around with Amane and the rest of his friends at a cafe. In that dream, Hibiki tries to show off and act all grown up, but Kyoko and Amane aren't having it. Instead, they just keep teasing and pampering him like he's some adorable little kid. Watching this whole dynamic unfold, Taiki just bursts into laughter and gives him a mocking thumbs up.
He totally roasts Hibiki, joking that his innocent vibe always manages to act like a magnet for older women, no matter where he goes.
もうすぐ夏休みだし、俺も綺麗なお姉さんと仲良く。
Hibiki briefly remembers the sweet smiles he gets from the older female shop clerks back home, but he quickly brushes it off. He stubbornly denies it all, treating Taiki's teasing as total nonsense that shouldn't be taken seriously. Suddenly, that beautiful memory shifts. He's walking down the school hallway, right up until the exact moment a blindingly bright white light erupts and swallows him whole, dragging him straight into this crazy isekai world.
The dream instantly shatters as Hibiki snaps awake. His first instinct is to check his smartphone, but of course, it's completely dead. Sitting there in the pitch-black night, a suffocating wave of homesickness suddenly washes over him.
Desperate to shake off the sad vibes, Hibiki distracts himself by inspecting Amalia's protective barrier magic. He decides to test out his appraiser skill on it, and to his surprise, a mysterious status screen pops up, floating right in front of his eyes.
Absolutely amazed to see hardcore proof that magic is real. Hibiki quickly shifts into a comfortable sitting position. He decides it's the perfect time to peek at his very own personal status screen to figure out what kind of hidden potential he's working with.
っていうか、カッコ仮って何なんだろう。
But reality hits him like a truck. It turns out he's literally just an appraiser provisional with 0 combat abilities. Feeling incredibly disappointed, Hibiki can only let out a massive sigh, accept his squishy fate, and go back to sleep. As dawn breaks, Amalia wakes up and does a nice morning stretch. It takes her brain a solid few seconds to process the fact that there is a strange young man sleeping peacefully right next to her. The second she realizes she just spent an entire night alone with a guy, the beautiful elf's face flushes bright red. She instantly spirals into a massive internal panic, getting super flustered and nervous about the whole situation. Amalia tries her best to play it cool, telling herself this is just normal adventurer stuff. But deep down, she feels a little sad reflecting on her own life, realizing she spent all this time traveling totally alone without a single companion. The awkward tension vanishes the moment Hibiki politely hands back a button that fell off her shirt. But he immediately ruins the mood by making a super innocent, absolutely clueless comment about her chest size with a totally straight face.
ごめんなさいね。もう大丈夫。
After getting comically beaten up for that comment, Hibiki trails behind Amalia through the dense forest. He thanks her for the healing medicine and starts asking about their route as they make their way toward the city of Lowell. While discussing the threat of monsters, Hibiki casually brags that he can easily detect them from a distance using his world map skill. He is completely, utterly clueless about just how insanely rare that ability actually is. Amalia's eyes practically pop out of her head in disbelief. She immediately gives Hibiki a massive lecture, explaining that World Map is a legendary AAA tier skill that normal people in this world simply do not have. Getting super suspicious about who he really is, Amalia starts interrogating him about his job class. Hibiki totally panics, stubbornly refusing to reveal his true status, and they push forward on their journey with his big secret still under wraps. Amalia keeps scolding him about his downright noob-level adventurer knowledge while intensely gripping her bow. But her spicy rant comes to a screeching halt when Hibiki gives her an awkward smile and genuinely calls her his friend. But the surprises aren't over yet. Hibiki's map suddenly picks up the signal of a rare monster. When Amalia finds out their target is a crystal rabbit, she starts laughing hysterically, already drooling over the massive pile of gold coins they'll get from its insane market value. Without missing a beat, Amalia stretches out her hands from behind the bushes to cast a silencing spell so they won't be detected. Meanwhile, Hibiki is just sitting there, completely mesmerized, staring in absolute awe at the beautiful magical effects wrapping around them.
サウンドカット、オーダーカット。
Right after that, Hibiki actually steps up and offers to become her permanent partner. Amalia's face instantly flushes bright red, and the poor elf gets completely flustered because she's just so incredibly happy and totally caught off guard by the request. Unfortunately, things don't go as planned. Amalia's magic arrow misses by a mile because the target is just way too agile. The beautiful elf instantly drops to her knees in despair, feeling totally crushed that she fumbled the bag on such an epic catch.
Seeing this, Hibiki does some quick thinking, figures out the monster's weak point, and makes the crazy decision to offer himself up as bait. Emalia is super worried for his safety, but she reluctantly agrees to go along with his incredibly reckless plan.
The moment the rabbit gets cornered and angrily lunges straight at Hibiki, Amalia perfectly snipes it out of midair with a wind arrow. The super rare monster finally drops dead right in front of them.
What's really crazy is that this victory triggers a massive, drastic level-up notification for Hibiki. Meanwhile, Amalia is busy showering him with praise, holding their ridiculously expensive loot high in the air with the biggest, happiest smile on her face.
Meanwhile, in a completely different location, a mysterious man sitting on a golden throne smiles and sends his distant blessings. This happens at the exact same time a girl named Evil finishes up her new member registration at the Adventurers Guild in the center of the city.
But plot twist, Ivel subtly waves off the quest board offered by the receptionist. Instead, she just scans her guild card with a super secretive smile on her face, making it totally obvious that she already has a very specific target in mind.
Leaving the guild to hunt down their target, Hibiki and Amalia finally arrive in the city of Rao. They're wearing these green cloaks to keep a low profile while they try to sell that awesome crystal horn.
Curious about how much cash they could make, Hibiki asks about the value of gold coins. He checks his support system, and his eyes practically bulge out of his head when he sees the insane exchange rate to yen.
道理でエマリアさんが目の色を変えるわけだ。
Emalia catches Hibiki zoning out and immediately gives him a super serious look. She warns him not to let his guard down, knowing full well that bad guys in the city would easily take advantage of his innocent attitude.
Right on cue, a sketchy group of foreign adventurers walks up and starts mocking Hibiki's appearance. But Amalia isn't having it. She instantly steps up, glaring daggers at them to defend her little buddy.
Luckily, Emalia's fierce vibe makes them chicken out. The party leader flashes an awkward smile, apologizes, and gives Hibiki a friendly pat on the shoulder before the group finally leaves the guild.
With that drama over, Amalia calls over an animal-eared receptionist named Jewel. She asks for a private negotiation room because the loot they brought is way too rare to just flash around in the open.
Yo, Emalia. 今日は何の用だ?
Inside, Hibiki openly fanboys over the muscular physique of a guy named Balls. Feeling incredibly proud, Balls literally rips his shirt off to flex his muscles, leaving Hibiki absolutely starstruck. Completely ignoring the fact that they're there to sell something, the two of them just start chatting like old gym bros. Balls happily gives Hibiki all sorts of workout advice on how to build a rock-solid body. Balls even goes as far as demonstrating some intense water magic that leaves Hibiki dizzy. But, miraculously, the system automatically registers that awesome power as Hibiki's brand new skill.
Once the chaos settles down, Emalia finally pulls out the rare crystal horn. Bowles and Jewel instantly freeze in pure shock at the sight of this massive, beautifully glittering chunk of crystal.
But the moment Balls tries to lowball them with an offer of around 400 coins, Amalia's face turns absolutely terrifying. She gives off such a vicious aura that the buff guy immediately breaks into a cold sweat.
The negotiation turns into a brutal tug-of-war. Emalia plays it super cunning and refuses to back down even a little bit, forcing a panicked and cornered Balls to keep raising his price.
700枚だ.
Even though they agree on a sky-high number, Jewel drops a cold threat, telling Balls that the rest of the purchase funds will be deducted straight from his salary, leaving the poor guy shaking in his boots.
Puffed up with pride, Emalia starts daydreaming about how Hibiki is going to worship her for her epic negotiation skills. But her fantasy is rudely interrupted when a fed-up Jewel literally throws them all out of the room.
While slumped on the hallway floor, a level-up notification pops up. It reveals to Hibiki that his entire survival so far has heavily relied on a secret tutorial skill gifted by God. His jaw drops when God suddenly speaks to him via telepathy, explaining that his divine support quota is completely used up. From now on, Hibiki won't have that automatic safety net anymore. The second the official system guide deactivates, Hibiki can only accept his fate. Right at that moment, Imalia runs back up to him with a huge smile, signaling that their real adventure has only just begun. Just as Imalia is beaming about their new journey, a guild staff member suddenly hands her an urgent letter. The fairy's face instantly drains of color, while Hibiki just stares blankly at her sudden change in expression. With a dead serious look in her eyes, Imalia explains that she has to head back to her hometown alone. The mission is just way too dangerous for a beginner adventurer like Hibiki right now.
Meanwhile, inside a pitch-black cave, Evil is seen using mirror magic to search for something. He clenches his jaw in frustration when the reflection in his magic mirror suddenly vanishes.
Tapping his chin in thought, Iwil finally steps out of the cave to find a new objective, since his mirror magic attempt ended up being a total bust.
Back in the middle of the city, Hibiki takes a deep breath and gives a faint smile to reassure Imalia. He wants her to know he'll be totally fine, even if he has to tough it out on his own from now on.
Hearing that, Hibiki plans to only take safe quests. Imalia stops in her tracks. She looks incredibly relieved to find out her partner is actually thinking rationally.
As a final parting gift, Imalia hands him a map to her old inn. She warmly advises him to stay there so he has a safe roof over his head and doesn't end up sleeping on the city streets. But when Hibiki tries to return the bow she gave him, the emotional vibe is instantly ruined. He gets a bit too enthusiastic, forcing the bow back, and the button on Imalia's tight shirt suddenly pops off.
Thanks to that embarrassing incident, a beet-red Amelia sprints away blindly. She's so overwhelmed with embarrassment that she isn't watching where she's going and crashes right into someone on the street.
While frantically apologizing, Imalia accidentally blurts out her destination right in front of Evil, who had been watching from afar. He immediately jumps on the chance and asks her about the route to the elf country.
Flashing a sly smile, Iwil decides to tag along on Imalia's journey. He uses the excuse that they're heading in the same direction, plotting to sneak into the elf country without raising any suspicion. Meanwhile, in his quiet inn room, Hibiki can only stare blankly at the ceiling. He mourns his completely dead smartphone battery, realizing that he is now totally cut off from his original world.
Hibiki's mind drifts back to when he first heard rumors about a place called Another World. He had been so hyped, thinking he finally found a way back to his own world.
That daydream shatters when he remembers the bitter truth. That place was actually just a brothel. The realization had made him run away in terror, leaving him slumped over and cursing his ridiculous luck for being so easily duped. Hibiki's pity party comes to an abrupt halt when the innkeeper, Tanya, knocks on his door. It forces the guy to get out of bed and face the reality of living in this strange new world.
すぐに行きます。待ってるわね。
Realizing he desperately needs cash to survive, Hibiki sits on the edge of his bed and opens his magic status screen. It's time to finally evaluate all those God-given abilities he's been totally ignoring.
Even though he does a massive double take at his ridiculous old lady killer title, Hibiki's attention quickly shifts to a magic book icon. It offers medical skills, which seems like a super safe way to rake in some money.
The system highly recommends the medical book as the best choice. However, Hibiki gulps nervously when he sees a warning that the knowledge transfer process takes a long time and absolutely cannot be stopped once started.
Mustering up his courage, Hibiki gives the system the green light. Glowing pages start swirling all around him, kicking off the massive transfer of medical knowledge straight into his brain. On the flip side, Amalia's journey under the twilight sky is interrupted by Evil's teasing. He playfully asks how deep her feelings really are for the Hibiki she left behind, making her face turn completely red.
Their chat is cut short when a maid with glowing glasses blocks their path at the end of the road. Imalia jumps for joy when she recognizes Stelia, who turns out to be an official bodyguard sent by her own family. Missing her so much, Imalia pulls Stelia into a tight, super happy hug, but the touching reunion instantly turns ridiculous when the maid starts groping her inappropriately, making the whole vibe incredibly awkward.
Stelia's obsessive jealousy literally explodes, cracking her glasses, when Ivel purposely claims to be Imalia's new party member.
It turns the fairy's journey home into total chaos.
After being passed out on his bed for a few days, Hibiki finally wakes up gasping for air. All that high-level healing knowledge from the system has now been perfectly embedded into his brain. Ready to start this new chapter of his life, Hibiki confidently marches over to the equipment shop. He spends his remaining coins on his first set of red leather armor to boost his confidence as a solo adventurer. Strolling down the city streets feeling super relieved, Hibiki smiles up at the sky and gives his system assistant the cute nickname Sapo-chan. Little does he know, a much grander destiny is already waiting for him. Hibiki's peace is shattered in an instant when the guild doors are kicked open. A group of adventurers rushes in carrying a dying comrade, and the sight of a severed bloody arm makes Hibiki's jaw drop. Seeing the receptionist panic because the head healer is away, Hibiki steps up and offers to help. He's determined to save this fading life, even though his skills as an independent healer are still totally brand new. Hibiki's breathing gets heavy as the system shows time running out while poison ravages the victim's body. To make matters worse, a warning pops up saying his MP is way below the minimum requirement. Hibiki immediately begs everyone in the room to form a magic contract with him. He needs them to donate their energy so he can cast this incredibly demanding high-level healing spell. A blinding green light fills the room as Hibiki casts the perfect healing spell. Miraculously, the patient's missing arm starts growing back completely whole, right in front of the dumbfounded adventurers. Hibiki's mind flashes back to his past, remembering a maid who used to scold him while shoving bread in his face. She always warned him to stop acting so recklessly without thinking about his own safety. That memory fades when an exhausted Hibiki sees Jade bowing deeply to thank him. But the warm moment suddenly turns serious when he is strictly forbidden from telling anyone about this incredible miracle. Jewel warns him that his massive power could attract serious danger. She strongly advises Hibiki to get a personal bodyguard right away to protect his life, which is now at risk from outside threats. Meanwhile, in a dark, faraway prison, a fierce wolf monster stands on guard, fiercely protecting a mysterious little girl. It's as if a massive new destiny has just started moving toward Hibiki. Hibiki wasted no time and headed straight to the Debbie company to find a bodyguard, just like Jules suggested. But instead of a normal greeting, he was welcomed by Ajarathan bowing respectfully while super weirdly sniffing the air around him. Ajarathan proudly showed off a super muscular bodyguard with a rock-hard physique, but Hibiki awkwardly had to pass. He specifically needed a candidate with a massive mana pool to support his magic. Realizing he wouldn't find anyone fitting his highly specific criteria just by looking at the regular lineup, Hibiki made up his mind to handpick them himself. So he and Ajarathan started walking down the gloomy underground cell corridors. Totally creeped out by Ajarathan constantly sniffing his wealth aura, Hibiki checked the guy's status. Turns out he has this money-detecting instinct that makes his face look incredibly perverted whenever he catches the scent of gold coins. As soon as he heard about the defective slaves who had nowhere to return to, Hibiki's sympathy immediately flared up. Feeling a sense of kinship, he asked to be taken to see the condition of their cell. When they arrived at the deepest ironclad prison, Hibiki's jaw dropped. Sitting right there in the dark corner of the cell was a giant, ferocious-looking werewolf, tightly protecting a little girl. Ajarathan explained that the beast was incredibly dangerous, prompting Hibiki to instinctively try peeking at its status through the system. Unfortunately, all the important information was completely hidden and locked behind a heavy aggression threat. Just as he started to panic, the AI reminded him about his expert eye skill. Activating it instantly summoned a giant text window explaining his divine power that had been hidden deep within him all this time. Hibiki cursed the god in his head for burdening him with such an absurdly overpowered ability, but the god simply brushed off his mental protest with a totally goofy wink. Once the illusion was shattered by his true power, Hibiki's eyes widened in shock. The wolf monster was actually a hero named Claude,
who was bound by an absolutely cruel and absolute curse.
His blood boiled even more when he checked Lillian's status and discovered she was actually a brilliant sage burdened with a fatal magic curse. He just couldn't bear seeing the tragic fate that had befallen the two of them in that awful place.
While the god casually gave him the green light to take them away, the AI whispered a brilliant tactic using relief measure. This would allow Hibiki to break that deadly curse in a much safer and more effective way.
Without hesitation, Hibiki announced he was buying them both. Ajirathan literally bent over backwards, completely losing his mind over the fantastic transaction amount that was about to line his pockets. After relocating to a secluded forest, the still-bound Claude started thrashing around, full of suspicion. However, he instantly froze when Hibiki flashed an innocent smile and offered genuine help to heal all his wounds.
To start the treatment, Hibiki asked Lillian for some mana backup. The little girl even bravely yelled at Claude to stay still so she could finally save the hero who had been protecting her all this time. Lillian firmly stated her sincere resolve to be his energy source, and they finally agreed to a magic contract. The once tensed forest atmosphere completely shifted into one filled with warmth and touching emotion. As golden light began to overflow, Hibiki immediately cast Perfect Heal, instantly shattering all of Claude's curse chains into tiny pieces. And right then and there, the legend of his personal bodyguard truly began.
Right after the deadly curse faded, a tearful Lillian tightly hugged her werewolf protector. Meanwhile, Claude could only express his deep gratitude because the little girl had managed to save his life.
Not long after, Hibiki looked at the two of them dead seriously and exposed Claude's true identity as a legendary hero. Naturally, this shocked the werewolf so much that he literally stopped breathing for a second. Hibiki then explained his divine eyes that could appraise anyone's abilities, including Lillian's. This made Claude break out in a cold sweat, realizing just how terrifyingly knowledgeable this mysterious kid in front of him really was. Noticing there were still leftover shackles, Hibiki immediately cast Relief Measure. Claude started thrashing in pain again as the curse chains suddenly manifested and choked him with incredible force. Thanks to the spell, a loud scream echoed as one chain successfully shattered into pieces. But weirdly enough, the magical scissors vanished right after, even though there were still a few cursed shackles left. Hibiki immediately started ranting angrily at the god, but Sapo-chan casually explained that his current level capacity simply wasn't strong enough to break all the curse chains in one go. But even though it wasn't perfect, breaking just that one chain was enough to restore Claude's energy. His face was no longer pale, and Hibiki could finally breathe a sigh of relief seeing his new friend's condition. Claude instantly dropped to his knees to sincerely apologize, leaving Hibiki tilting his head in pure confusion. It was such a wild shift in attitude from the fierce, highly suspicious wolf hero from before. Completely ignoring his new master's confusion, Claude urged Hibiki to immediately perform the ritual of absolute loyalty. It was his way of repaying the massive debt for being given a second chance at life.
契約？儀式に必要なの？
Thanks to a brilliant suggestion from Sapo-chan, Hibiki reached out his hand, which started glowing with a blinding magical light. Claude literally got goosebumps of awe, feeling such a massive aura of power coming from the kid. Right as the vow was spoken, pillars of holy light suddenly crashed down from the sky, piercing through the forest canopy. It felt like the universe itself was blessing the sacred ritual they were performing. After his oath was accepted, a colorful explosion of sparks instantly lit up the sky, signaling that the magical contract between the two of them had been officially validated by the pure power of the light spirits. Shortly after, a golden sun crest was permanently engraved on Hibiki's hand, automatically finalizing Claude's status as a personal bodyguard who would forever serve his master with unwavering loyalty.
これからよろしく、クロード。
Shifting far away from there, an elf maid named Amalia Steinbart looked totally exhausted while hiking up a mountain. She even started having wild fantasies about how amazing it would be to soak in a hot spring right about now.
But she was so shocked to see her master's fiery enthusiasm about bathing together that Amalia's glasses literally cracked into pieces. She never expected her absurd imagination to actually turn into an embarrassing reality.
That daydream was cut short as we jump back to the forest, where Hibiki reminded his companions that his magic energy capacity was running dangerously low, and he needed help to keep going.
Lillian instantly responded with a cheerful laugh, letting Hibiki execute an emergency mana-sharing spell so the kids' magic reserves wouldn't completely hit rock bottom while facing the dangers of the forest.
The impact of that energy sharing actually leveled up Hibiki's magic book, but a very confused Claude ended up asking who this Sapo-chan was that his new master kept talking to.
The moment he heard the explanation that Hibiki was an interdimensional traveler, Claude's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. He was absolutely stunned, realizing he was now serving a truly magnificent and special being. After calming down a slightly confused Lillian, Claude confidently led them all along the valley cliffs, ready to kick off a true adventure that would change the destiny of their world forever.
Hibiki suddenly blurted out everything about Lillian's incredibly dangerous innate skill. The little girl stared at him, full of questions, before instantly collapsing into a faint because her dark secret was so casually exposed.
Claude immediately recounted the dark past regarding the mastermind behind the curse. Meanwhile, Hibiki's jaw dropped, deeply regretting his careless words after he correctly guessed that the root of the problem came from divine interference.
Because his name was mentioned on Earth, the magic god instantly appeared to drop a threat, refusing to show any mercy to the underworld god, who was literally drenched in cold sweat from sheer terror upon receiving that special message.
Hibiki broke into a cold sweat when he heard the magic god's solution via telepathy. Meanwhile, Lillian and Claude were cheering happily, completely thinking all their curse troubles were finally over.
But that joy vanished when a loud system notification chimed in, explaining a sudden error. Hibiki's face went completely pale as he realized his divine status analysis power had just been completely deactivated by the system.
Hibiki tried to focus on casting a new spell under the watchful eye of the magic god, until his magic orb created a massive smoke explosion that completely covered their vision in the middle of the vast grassy field. After the white cat named Veni introduced herself, Lillian found her so adorable she immediately hugged her tight. But that actually made Claude glare with extreme jealousy, feeling like his position as the favorite was totally being threatened.
Claude's dark aura grew even thicker, with his eyes glowing a terrifying red, though he instantly pretended to act normal the second Hibiki threw a casual smile at their cute new party member.
The moment Hibiki joined in to pet Vene's head, Claude finally exploded in anger, whining and begging for head pats too. It got to the point where absurd laser beams suddenly shot out of his head from the stress of feeling ignored by his master.
Meanwhile, somewhere else, Amalia and Stelia were chilling in a hot spring. The bespectacled elf couldn't help but admire her friend's absolutely stunning body proportions through the steam.
However, that relaxing vibe was interrupted when Ivel coldly rejected an offer to help scrub her back. This forced Amelia to laugh awkwardly, while Stelia scolded her best friend's aggressive attitude for forcing herself onto people too much.
Luckily, Amalia's genuine kindness managed to melt Ivel's icy heart. A warm, gentle smile finally bloomed on her face, and the three of them stood together to embrace a beautiful new friendship that night.
After spacing out about friendship in the bath, Hibiki gets totally distracted by Claude's super flashy chest armor and spear. He can't help himself and immediately starts asking all about his combat gear. It turns out, Claude's wolf metabolism is so high that he literally drips with sweat when wearing heavy armor. That's why Hibiki and Lillian have to frantically fan this giant guy whose face is already bright red from the heat. Not long after that, Lillian shows off her new cloak, spinning around cheerfully with the sweetest look on her face.
But Hibiki completely freezes in shock when the shopkeeper reveals the astronomical price tag, instantly putting his wallet on life support.
安い。
そうなんだ。
Because of the crazy high price, Lillian immediately gets gloomy, radiating this dark purple aura of guilt for being a burden. But Hibiki just gives her the most genuine smile, trying his best to reassure her that the cloak suits her perfectly.
Those comforting words totally work, making Lillian's eyes sparkle brightly with pure admiration. She's so surprised and never expected Hibiki to care that much, and even the shopkeeper smiles proudly seeing his kindness. Lillian shyly mumbles and calls him Big Brother, which completely melts Hibiki's heart. But at the exact same time, his face goes pale with panic because their remaining funds are completely wiped out just to pay for that insanely expensive cloak. Hibiki quickly corrects her because he wants them to be equals, which makes Lillian look down in embarrassment. But then, they both share this incredibly warm smile, completely erasing any walls between them. Suddenly, Vinay jumps in, looking super jealous and annoyed because she feels ignored. The white cat demands a fancy blue necklace, which leaves Hibiki completely helpless as he watches his savings drop to absolute zero. After happily blowing through their cash, Vinay suddenly gets serious and stands on a rock like a strict drill instructor. She starts lecturing Hibiki about how crucial it is to polish their basic magic, since their team is seriously lacking in firepower. The moment Veni proudly brags about her identity as an ancient grimoire, Hibiki's eyes light up with excitement. He clenches his fists, totally expecting to be taught some insanely overpowered, lethal attack magic to obliterate their enemies. Since Hibiki complains too much, he and Lillian are forced to kneel and call the cat Master. Meanwhile, Vene puffs out her chest and gets busy displaying Lillian's magic system data on a cool floating screen. Realizing Lillian's body is still too weak for pure power, Vene intentionally locks her attack stats at the absolute minimum. She definitely doesn't want her human vessel to literally explode if she recklessly tries to cast high-level magic. The lesson then moves on to mana circulation theory, using this complex, glowing animated diagram. Hibiki is forced to listen closely so he can understand how to channel magical energy without risking his own life in battle. But since Hibiki is a bit slow on the uptake and just scratches his head in confusion, Veni loses her temper. She immediately orders Claude to use a much more extreme physical method to get that mana flowing properly. The second, Claude's giant hand tightly grips Hibiki's. A massive explosion of yellow magical energy engulfs their bodies. It's so intense that even Vene panics, seeing the completely uncontrollable overflow of mana. Hibiki wakes up completely intact in an empty, all-white dimension. Every step he takes creates water ripples on an invisible floor, all thanks to that massive energy surge that just severed his mind's connection to the real world. Hibiki's mind drifts into Claude's past as the void transforms into a nighttime forest. Sitting right there is a graceful elf woman named Anastasia, looking like she's waiting under a beautiful blanket of starlight. When she calls out Claude's name, Hibiki gasps, realizing his soul is hitching a ride inside the wolf's body. He can feel every single emotion and sense that Claude experienced, perfectly recorded in this beautiful memory. With calm steps, Claude approaches Anastasia, and they sit close together, soaking in the beauty of the full moon reflecting on the lake. It's such a peaceful memory that feels incredibly real, yet so heartbreaking at the same time. Fragments of their time together start playing out like a short film. We get to see everything from relaxing moments of learning to read books, all the way to intense magical battles on the battlefield, filled with their shared struggles. Sadly, that piece is completely shattered by a brutal, bloody tragedy. It leaves Claude trembling, his hands soaked in a pool of red, drowning in deep despair, because he has lost absolutely everything. The vision of that bloody tragedy fades away as Hibiki opens his eyes, panting heavily. He feels like his soul had swapped with Claude's, leaving him confused as he looks at his own body, while the wolf stares at him with so much worry. Still shaking as he looks at his hands, Hibiki slowly starts to remember his true identity. Claude keeps trying to calm him down, and eventually they manage to sit back and relax on the grassy field at their base.
But that calmness doesn't last long, because Sapo immediately scolds Claude mercilessly for the uncontrolled mana flow. Claude can only bow his head in deep regret, feeling terrible that he almost hurt his master.
Sapo laughs mockingly, assuming Hibiki saw some funny childhood secret. In reality, Hibiki chooses to stay quiet to hide Claude's past memories, which are actually incredibly traumatic and heartbreaking.
Feeling that Claude's emotional burden is just too heavy, Hibiki distracts himself by mopping the hallway floors all alone. He occasionally glances up at the cloudy sky, which perfectly matches his gloomy mood.
Unexpectedly, Hibiki actually uses those cleaning chores to train his Mona control. He even looks super fired up while chopping wood under the strict supervision of Sapo, who acts as his mentor.
とりあえず家事を率先してやってはいるけど
After all that exhausting work, Claude tries to help out, but clumsily knocks over a bucket, spilling water all over the floor. He instantly feels guilty, knowing his massive body size makes it so hard to do delicate tasks. Instead of getting mad, Hibiki just smiles casually as their friends praise Claude for being so adorable. That compliment totally embarrasses the fierce hero, to the point where a cute dark aura covers his face.
The moment Amalia appears in the doorway, Hibiki unleashes a cleaning magic that makes the whole room sparkle in an instant. The elf is absolutely amazed to see the base's floor so spotless and praises him non-stop.
Amalia's promise of extra food as a reward makes Hibiki literally jump for joy. His cheerful, hungry expression is so contagious that the whole group gets hyped and can't wait to rush to the dining room.
Right after eating, the training resumes. Lillian gets busy practicing her water element magic, while Claude walks over to Hibiki and hands him a trusty bow to kick off his long-range combat training.
As it turns out, Hibiki's physical strength is way too weak to pull the bowstring, causing every single shot to miss by a mile. He ends up collapsing on the ground, completely exhausted, even though the physical training session has only been going on for a few minutes.
Claude keeps trying to cheer him on so he won't give up, but Hibiki can only wince and show off his badly blistered palms. His muscles and skin just aren't used to doing such heavy physical activities at all.
Meanwhile, deep in the dense forest, Amalia is seen leading a mysterious group of adventurers. What's crazy is that one of her loyal maids looks exactly like the figure from Claude's heartbreaking memories.
To save time, Amalia suggests taking a shortcut to an old fortress rumored to be filled with deadly curses. Instead of being scared, Ivil's purple eyes actually light up with intense curiosity.
Even though she hesitates for a second, Amalia eventually takes a bold step inside. The bitter truth is that her wallet is completely empty, making the treasure in that creepy place their only hope to survive.
With Anastasia feeling incredibly anxious and worried, the three of them start walking through the pitch-black darkness of the forest. It's a reckless decision that, without them even realizing it, is about to lead them straight into massive danger.
While the three of them are risking their lives in the dark forest, Hibiki's having a much better time. He's busy cooking up a storm, making all sorts of delicious dishes for his team to enjoy out in the open.
But that chill vibe suddenly gets noisy when Hibiki starts complaining about a messy pile of apples. He even teases Claude, who looks super nervous because his food prep skills are a total disaster. Not wanting to lose the argument, Claude makes up an excuse that he's been hit by a mysterious curse. This makes Hibiki burst into disbelief laughter, holding his sides as he asks where on earth this ridiculous curse came from. Their laughter abruptly stops when the system suddenly flashes a danger warning. Hibiki's face instantly tenses up because a wild monster is heading straight for their current position right this second. Right after Hibiki warns Cloud, a ferocious wild boar bursts out and charges at them. Cloud immediately gets into a combat stance, ready to protect his friends from the wild monster's attack. Once Claude stands victorious over the monster's corpse, Lillian quickly casts a spell to wrap up the boar. Meanwhile, Hibiki is forced to step closer and learn how to skin their prey as part of his physical training. On the flip side, Amalia's group finally arrives at the ancient ruins they were aiming for. Even though the maid has warned her countless times about the danger, Amalia just stares at the building with pure excitement.
The second they step inside, they immediately find a massive pile of gold. Amalia celebrates with a joyful hug, totally feeling like all their poverty problems have officially ended today.
But Evil notices something is off when she sees her friends randomly bowing down. She instantly realizes they are trapped in a spirit illusion and quickly preps a spell to snap them out of it.
The daydream shatters as Hibiki collapses from exhaustion, his body covered in boar blood. But in the midst of his fatigue, he remembers he has a cleaning magic and decides to test out its power to wash himself off right away.
Still annoyed about being forced to skin the boar, Hibiki marches straight up to Claude, completely ignoring his protests. He starts casting the cleaning magic, which makes the big guy instantly panic like crazy.
Hibiki pushes his glowing hands forward, and the magical energy wraps Claude in a giant water bubble. The great warrior has no choice but to surrender and become the very first test subject for this brand new cleaning magic.
Right after our favorite werewolf finished celebrating his sparkling clean body, Claude and Hibiki were just sitting there looking totally defeated at their coin pouch. Man, their funds were running seriously low after spending way too much lately. Because of that broke status, Vinny and Lillian got super hyped and suggested they start taking on guild quests to make some quick cash. I mean, they had to survive this massive financial crisis somehow.
But Claude only agreed after flashing this totally intimidating smile, laying down the absolute law that they were strictly sticking to rank F quests to keep Hibiki safe. This all went down right as Jewel welcomed them at the guild.
When they got there, Hibiki's jaw practically hit the floor. He saw this massive, mountainous pile of quest papers on the receptionist's desk and was just completely overwhelmed by how ridiculously insane that workload looked.
Claude had to explain that grabbing a bunch of these low-level grunt work quests in bulk is totally normal for rookie adventurers. It is the only way they can actually scrape together a decent payout from doing manual labor.
Even though they were offered a quest to catch some bandits, Hibiki just looked away. He was way too lazy to deal with that kind of hassle and opted to head into the forest to hunt rabbits instead, which seemed way easier. The party finally made their way into the dense forest, where Hibiki went full stealth mode. With absolute concentration, he drew his bowstring, aiming right at an off-guard horned rabbit chilling in the bushes.
His shot was dead on. Hibiki breathed a huge sigh of relief, especially when Claude praised him for passing the hunting test. Right at that moment, Lillian happily popped back up, showing off a whole basket full of foraged goodies from the woods.
Lillian was so excited explaining what the mechica fruit does. She literally threw one at a tree and it exploded into this crazy colorful liquid. Apparently, they use it as a trail marker so they do not get lost in the forest.
Watching that peaceful scene, Hibiki's mind totally drifted back to his past. He remembered his quiet, normal school life before he got yeeted into this bizarre alternate world where he has to fight tooth and nail just to survive.
His daydreaming was cut short when Lillian gave him this super worried look. She noticed her master suddenly looking incredibly gloomy and sad while they were resting by the campfire that night.
Meanwhile, over at his own camp, Ivel was brooding and grumbling in frustration. His search for that specific soul he had been hunting was at a complete standstill, and he could not find a single clue anywhere.
Amalia tried to warm her partner's cold heart by handing him a protective charm as a token of their friendship. Poor girl had no idea that her genuine kindness was totally going to be exploited by Ivel for his own twisted schemes later.
Ivel just flashed a sweet fake smile as he took the charm. Deep down, he was already cooking up a rotten plan to keep playing along just to get what he wanted, completely ignoring Amalia's sincere feelings.
The very next morning, Hibiki swaggered back into the guild and proudly slammed down 3 coin pouches. But Jewel immediately got suspicious and started interrogating them, thinking they totally cheated to get that kind of haul. Before he could even get over being underestimated, Hibiki was stopped in his tracks by this absolute meathead named Balls. The guy called out from behind and just started roasting Hibiki's small size, calling him totally weak and powerless. Balls rudely decided he was going to force Hibiki into muscle training, but Claude instantly stepped up. He body-blocked the guy to protect his master from this incredibly arrogant and annoying stranger.
Feeling like his muscle logic was insulted during their argument, Balls completely lost it. He literally ripped his own shirt off and challenged Claude to a manly physical duel right there in the middle of the crowded city.
While the townsfolk were panicking and running for their lives, Hibiki tried to keep his cool. He fired up his appraisal skill to check just how insane the stats were on this enemy that Claude was currently struggling against.
It turns out Balls' strength was absolutely brutal, forcing Claude on the defensive. But Claude's pride would not let him back down. His eyes started glowing red as he totally refused to just surrender to those deadly attacks. All that chaos finally triggered Jewel's wrath. She unleashed a massive water magic explosion that instantly knocked out both of those muscle monsters. Hibiki could only stare in pure horror at the terrifying power of a pissed-off receptionist.
But that relief did not last long at all. Suddenly, a lady screamed that she got pickpocketed, and that is when it hit Hibiki. His wallet, holding all his hard-earned cash, had vanished without a single trace.
Hibiki went from feeling relieved to having a full-blown panic attack when he realized his wallet was gone. That is when Claude and Lillian got serious and started plotting a trap to catch this super agile bandit named Fauna.
To lure out this supposedly snake-tailed thief, Lillian came up with the craziest idea, dressing Hibiki up in a green dress as bait. They figured his face looked the least suspicious out of all of them.
Dying of embarrassment, Hibiki started his acting gig at a cafe. He ordered food from a friendly blonde waitress, trying his absolute best to act naturally like some rich, fancy customer.
Hibiki casually placed a blue wallet on the table as the bait, while Claude kept a super close eye from the distance to make sure their target actually walked right into the trap.
Somewhere else entirely, that mysterious guy Ivel was busy plotting some massive conspiracy from his throne. Meanwhile, Hibiki was just sitting there anxiously, waiting for the bandit who still had not shown their face. Right as his cute pancake order arrived, it finally clicked for Claude. The waitress who had been serving them the whole time was actually the bandit. She snatched the wallet in a flash and vanished into thin air. After that lightning-fast pickpocketing, Hibiki and his team immediately bolted, following the glowing footprints the thief left behind. The chase led them straight into a narrow alleyway in the city's dark, run-down slums.
The pursuit brought them into this incredibly sketchy underground bar. It was packed with buff, tattooed thugs, which instantly made Hibiki's courage completely evaporate.
Instead of getting beaten up, Hibiki was approached by this terrifying-looking thug who actually just wanted to offer him a handmade lace handkerchief. Thanks to his appraisal skill, Hibiki found out the guy was actually a master lace craftsman. And the funniest part? Another giant, scary-looking thug was just busy catching flies. His stats revealed he was just a guy who absolutely hated bugs and did not want any mosquitoes buzzing around him. They snapped back to reality when Hibiki accidentally bumped into a suspicious cloaked figure in the hallway. He immediately fired up his trusty scanning skill to confirm if this person was the target they were looking for. Thanks to Claude intimidatingly blocking the escape route, Hibiki confidently started exposing the person's true identity, reading right off the data from his glowing blue appraisal system. As soon as the hood came off, the figure was revealed to be a foxkin girl named Fauna, complete with a fluffy foxtail. She had purposely spread the snaketail rumor just to mock how easily gullible Hibiki was.
Fauna laughed mockingly while showing off Hibiki's real wallet. She had totally swapped it out when they bumped into each other earlier. The poor guy panicked, digging into his pocket only to find a useless fake wallet.
Even though Claude was busy shielding him from falling wooden debris, Hibiki recklessly stood up and sprinted off alone. He chased after Fauna's agile shadow through the dark alley, desperate to get his money back. Unfortunately, because he was running so recklessly, Hibiki's foot got caught in a rope trap. He ended up hanging upside down in the most embarrassing position, right in front of a very smug, laughing Fauna.
Right while Fona was having a blast mocking him, gravity did its thing, and Hibiki's dress skirt slipped down. The thief's face instantly morphed into absolute shock when she realized her victim was actually a dude. Trying so hard not to laugh, Fauna suddenly winked and offered a peace treaty. Turns out, she actually needed Hibiki's rare appraisal skill for something, even though our boy was still thrashing around demanding to be let down.
Hibiki was not about to just let his money vanish. He went into full appraiser mode, luring Fauna to a secret table in the dark alley to negotiate the fate of his stolen cash.
Right there, he meticulously sorted through the stolen goods. He tossed aside the fake pearls and only focused on the real deal, like an ancient dagger. Fauna was honestly blown away by how unexpectedly thorough Hibiki was.
Gaining more trust, Fauna pulled out her little brother's worn-out wooden bracelet to be tested. Hibiki started analyzing the rough carvings, explaining the deep cultural history hidden perfectly within such a simple item.
Hibiki actually managed to decode a secret message on the bracelet. Fauna literally dropped to her knees in shock. She never expected her brother's heartfelt message could be read so clearly through Hibiki's appraisal skill.
Finally realized that the messy carvings were actually a sign of love from her illiterate brother. Her eyes welled up with tears as she stared at the wooden scratches she had always thought were just worthless junk. With her heart totally melted, Fauna's attitude did a complete 180. She became super warm, almost like an older sister, and even gave Hibiki some solid advice to be more careful so he would not get scammed so easily again. As a peace offering, Fauna tossed the stolen coin pouch back onto the table. She felt like she owed him big time, since Hibiki helped her make peace with the painful past memories of her brother that she had been holding on to. The next day, Hibiki's cheek became the ultimate joke among his friends because Fauna's lipstick mark was impossibly hard to wash off. What should have been a serious morning turned into a total laugh riot thanks to his goofy face. The joking completely stopped when a veteran adventurer talked about the arrival of an undead extermination squad. Claude instantly went on high alert, taking this as a massive warning sign that serious danger was lurking along their upcoming travel route. Hearing about the undead made Hibiki's courage shrink into nothing. His face went completely pale, just imagining that army ambushing them at any given moment out in the dark forest. When night fell, Hibiki vented his anxieties in their room, but Claude calmly advised him to treat this journey as a huge learning experience to mature, which is exactly what he needs to survive in this crazy world. Those words totally worked, and Hibiki's eyes started sparkling again. He clenched his fists, completely determined to travel the world and find the legendary sages so his dream of finally going home could come true. But he got a little too excited and accidentally blurted out that he wanted to return to his original world. The room instantly got dead silent and super awkward as Lillian just stared at him with this incredibly heartbreaking, sad look. Hibiki looked down in sorrow, realizing that going home meant a permanent goodbye. His chest tightened seeing Lillian's face. She looked absolutely terrified at the thought of losing her most precious friend. Thankfully, Claude stepped in like a boss and wisely explained that being homesick is totally natural. Slowly, Lillian started to understand and gave a small nod, melting away all that heavy tension between them. While Hibiki finally managed to sleep peacefully, Emalia and Evil's group was trekking through a dark, isolated forest. They had absolutely zero clue that a super dangerous conspiracy was already brewing out there. Emalia happened to mention a memory about some supernatural whispers from a mysterious spirit she once heard. Evil, who was totally ignoring her before, suddenly demanded to know the exact location. He knew right away it was the clue he had been searching for. As soon as he got the location details, Ivel threw up a fake smile, said his goodbyes, and rushed off completely alone. He was not about to waste another second now that the massive puzzle he had been trying to solve was finally pieced together. Pushing through the dead of night, Ivel cursed his luck. It turned out the target he had been hunting this whole time was hiding in the exact same city he had just left. His anger completely boiled over, feeling like fate was just playing a cruel joke on him.
While that girl was fuming with anger, Anastasia was actually flashing a wicked smirk into her magic mirror. She was keeping a close eye on things from afar, already cooking up a brand new scenario since her previous evil scheme had completely flopped. The party then gathered at the tavern to hash out their route to the dungeon. Claude broke down all the dangers waiting for them, leaving Hibiki totally confused, while Lillian could only sit there in stunned silence at how deadly serious the Wolfman was being. Suddenly, Aniki burst into the room with a proud, booming laugh, offering to help build up Hibiki's physical strength. He felt a strong sense of duty because Hibiki was still way too weak to survive the dungeon's notoriously lethal challenges. Hibiki instantly lost all his energy when Claude dragged him out to the forest and forced him to start physical training. Claude absolutely refused to compromise, knowing full well that Hibiki's stats were still miles below the bare minimum standard for a normal adventurer. Claude and Aniki ended up getting into a massive, heated argument over the best training method, completely terrifying a panicked Hibiki. In the end, he had no choice but to agree to the grueling workout just to stop his two mentors from throwing hands at each other. Aniki's brutal regimen kicked off immediately, pushing Hibiki to drag a massive boulder with whatever tiny ounce of strength he had left. In stark contrast to the totally chill Aniki, both Hibiki and the little white cat looked absolutely tortured by the extreme exhaustion. Lillian watched the whole agonizing ordeal from the top of the cliff, her eyes filled with sorrow and deep concern. She honestly couldn't bear to see Hibiki torturing himself like that just to gain a massive power boost. The training focus then shifted to archery under Claude's super strict guidance. Even though his initial shots kept missing the mark, Tanya stayed right by his side, loyally watching Hibiki push himself to the limit to control his breathing and improve his accuracy. Hibiki immediately dropped to the ground, totally drained and disappointed when he saw that his status screen hadn't changed even a single bit. Even though he finally managed to hit the target, his glitched anomaly system was being ridiculously stingy with the stat points. That failure sparked another explosive argument between Claude and Aniki, getting so intense that literal sparks of lightning started flying. They yelled at each other, blaming the other's teaching methods, until the whole training vibe became completely toxic and impossible to continue. Jewel quickly stepped in to cool down the fiery tension and invited the whole crew to take a well-deserved break at the hot springs. Tanya started teasing Hibiki, who still looked pretty reluctant to just relax and wash away the fatigue from that insanely grueling workout. Surrounded by the thick steam, the fox lady couldn't hold back her curiosity about Claude's secrets. She started asking about the wolf's dark past, a history he had intentionally kept strictly hidden from the ears of outsiders. Claude opened up and shared a heartbreaking story about the destruction of his city and the tragic deaths of his former comrades. That deeply painful past was exactly why he swore an oath to stay completely loyal and protect Hibiki no matter what crazy situations they faced. Later that night, the rest of the group purposely backed away from the campfire to give Hibiki and Lillian some alone time. Even Tanya slipped away, so Lillian could finally confess the lingering doubts she had been bottling up since that afternoon. Lillian's emotional walls completely crumbled as tears started welling up in her eyes right in front of Hibiki. She broke down crying, confessing that she absolutely couldn't bear the thought of him leaving this world forever one day.
Lillian, ごめん、俺。
Feeling like she was being way too selfish, Lillian quickly wiped away her tears. She scolded herself for losing her cool, then handed him a recovery drink to help ease the intense emotional tension that had built up between the two of them. Flashing a genuinely sweet smile, the cat girl offered him her special brew and promised to support his adventure all the way. That incredibly touching moment left Hibiki feeling moved and more fired up than ever to face the massive dangers lurking inside the dungeon. While Hibiki and Lillian were making their heartfelt promise to have each other's backs, somewhere else, Emalia Steinbart was just chilling in a hot spring, totally ignoring all of her father's incredibly annoying plans. Her peaceful soak didn't last long, though, because her servants started frantically pounding on the wooden door. They were screaming and begging her to come out immediately, since they were running completely out of time for a super important event. The second she stepped out, the maids nervously offered her a gorgeous blue party dress with awkward smiles. That instantly made Amalia suspicious, and she gave them a
piercing glare, trying to figure out the real motive behind the king's sudden invitation.
Realizing her father had purposely hidden crucial information from her, Amalia's temper exploded, her face turning bright red with rage right in front of her mates, who could only offer up innocent, clueless smiles in return.
Thanks to that hidden agenda, the scene shifted to a dark, eerie forest where Eva was sitting and tracking the movements of Hibiki's approaching party. Meanwhile, Claude's instincts started screaming that something was seriously wrong with their surroundings.
Even though Hibiki's magic map looked completely clear of enemies, Claude tensed up instantly the moment he saw Evil purposefully throw herself to the ground. He immediately went into high alert, his eyes darting around cautiously to protect his friends.
Claude quickly pulled back the tip of his spear when Yvel started putting on a dramatic act, playing the role of a terrified, defenseless girl. Her acting was so good that it completely worked on Hibiki, leaving him looking confused, but also feeling genuinely sorry for her.
Hibiki didn't hesitate and immediately cast his appraisal skill to check the mysterious girl's status, knowing full well that her suddenly popping up in the middle of a pitch-black forest made absolutely zero sense. Unfortunately, his magic completely failed to pierce through Yvel's incredibly strong protection. Because of that, Hibiki wrongly concluded she wasn't a Brett and let his guard down, allowing the tension to fade as the girl flashed a super convincing sweet smile.
Seeing her opening, Yvel introduced herself while casually running her hands over Claude's armor. She claimed she was just an amateur adventurer who got lost while running for her life from a terrifying monster, which made the Wolfman look incredibly awkward.
For her ultimate trap, Evil pointed them in the exact direction of the supposed monster with a reassuring smile. However, she totally missed the fact that Lillian was already glaring at her, trusting her gut feeling that this girl was definitely hiding something sinister.
The moment Yvel left, Hibiki's magic map suddenly blinked to life, spawning a bright red dot in the exact direction she pointed. Seeing this, the group quickly huddled up and decided to chase after the target. They managed to corner a silver ruby wolf in a rocky dead end, but right as Hibiki drew his magic bow to take the shot, Sapo suddenly screamed out a frantic warning that something incredibly dangerous was coming. Sure enough, Hibiki's map screen instantly turned completely red as hundreds of massive wolves appeared, surrounding them from the cliffs above. Hibiki's jaw practically hit the floor in pure shock at the sheer, overwhelming number of enemies.
Caught off guard by the sudden ambush, Hibiki's neck was viciously torn open, leaving his body covered in severe bleeding. Lillian screamed hysterically, while up on the cliff, Yvel watched the bloodbath with deep satisfaction, thrilled that her master plan was working flawlessly.
Yvel laughed gleefully as she enjoyed the deadly spectacle, absolutely certain that there was no way Hibiki could survive the fatal bleeding caused by the powerful curse embedded in his neck wound.
Down below, Lillian was sobbing uncontrollably as her best healing potions did absolutely nothing to stop the relentless flow of blood. Meanwhile, Sapo desperately tried barking out instructions to save its master's fading life. Seeing the situation going from bad to worse, Lillian chanted a life-preserving spell that enveloped Hibiki's body in a protective magical light. It was a desperate last-ditch effort to freeze time on his condition before the wound completely stole his life away.
While furiously parrying the bites of the rabid wolves, Claude ordered Lillian to grab Hibiki's body and run as far away as possible. He knew their entire party would be wiped out if someone didn't stay behind to hold the enemy off.
Throwing away her hesitation, Lillian finally cast a summoning spell to call forth a giant stone golem, but only after Claude swore on his life that he would survive and catch up with them later.
The massive stone lion immediately bolted, carrying Hibiki far away from the blood-soaked valley. It tore through the forest at top speed, and Claude watched them escape with a heavy sigh of relief, even though he was now completely surrounded.
Noticing the bizarre way the enemies completely ignored Lillian, it finally dawned on Claude that he had been the primary target of Yvel's ambush all along. His overwhelming strength was clearly seen as the biggest threat on the board. With cold sweat soaking his fur, Claude gulped hard as a terrifying red-eyed alpha wolf slowly stepped out from the shadows. It was a grim sign that the brutal fight for his life was just getting started.
Anastasia wore an incredibly sinister smile as she monitored Claude's desperate battle through the reflection in the terrified, sweating wolf's eyes. She stood calmly under the moonlight, supremely satisfied that her trap had perfectly cornered her prey.
Meanwhile, Lillian and Hibiki Manabe rode the stone golem as it sprinted wildly to break through the pursuing wolf pack. They managed to outrun the enemies and discovered a cave to hide in, using thick vines to block the entrance and hold off any incoming attacks.
Even after Lillian used her staff to cast a sturdy, double-layered protection spell, Hibiki Manabe's condition actually worsened. He started coughing up blood as the deadly poison from his neck wound slowly pushed him right to the brink of death.
The young man was completely helpless as his system flashed a critical status warning. His totally depleted stamina locked away all of his regeneration abilities, leaving him to just stare at his own blood and speak out in pure despair.
Unable to stand watching Lillian sacrifice herself alone to maintain the windshield, Hibiki Manabe gritted his teeth and forced himself to stand up. He pushed through the pain, even though his automated system was actively blocking his healing process because it registered his body as having reached its absolute limit.
Because his sheer willpower completely defied the program's logic, Hibiki Manabe screamed at the top of his lungs until a glorious level-up notification suddenly popped up. Instantly, he was wrapped in a miraculous green healing aura that purged every last drop of the lethal poison from his system.
The moment he fully recovered, the young man chugged an instant stamina potion and chanted an incredible summoning spell. Seeing her friend finally bounce back from death's door brought a huge, relieved smile to Lillian's face.
Right at that very second, a massive lightning bolt struck with devastating force, blasting the wolf pack away as the holy tiger, Venezilia Nustor Ferratano, made its grand entrance. The sheer, godlike presence of the beast made every single one of those savage enemies instantly recoil in absolute terror. The Holy Tiger delivered a ruthlessly stern judgment before unleashing a massive destructive wave of lightning. As a result, the entire pack of wolves that dared to mess with its master was instantly vaporized, wiped completely off the map in a matter of seconds. But in a crazy twist, the giant beast slowly shrank down into an adorable little cat named Venekun. The ancient deity was forced back into his meaty, cuddly form because his divine magic limit had totally drained after pulling off such an insanely overpowered attack. Even though Hibiki Manabe was smiling with hope and ready to launch a counterattack, Venekun just looked down sadly and shook his head. With his power practically gone, their plan to go back and save their fellow hero suddenly felt incredibly daunting.
Venekun explained that his divine summoning came with a ridiculously long cooldown system. Hearing that, all Hibiki Manabe could do was stand there shocked and confused, clenching his fists tightly as he realized how troublesome their current power limits really were. Even though the little cat kept trying to warn him about the massive danger, the fiery resolve in Hibiki Manabe's eyes didn't waver for a second. He turned around with burning determination, absolutely refusing to let his very first mentor die getting ganged up on by monsters.
Hibiki Manabe's mind drifted back to the past, remembering the heroic smile of Claude. But that daydream was quickly shattered by confusion when his mysterious phantom system suddenly sent him a cryptic message right as they were regrouping.
Since he didn't have any decent weapons on hand, Hibiki Manabe steeled his heart and took a massive gamble. He gave the command to activate a secret still suggested by the system, even though he was honestly still pretty confused and suspicious about the whole thing. Out of nowhere, the residual magic explosion caused a weird little sprout to suddenly shoot up and grow into a magical piece of wood. Venekun's eyes went wide with sheer confusion as he watched their surroundings undergo such a drastic, crazy transformation. That wood then shifted into an absolutely mesmerizing bow.
Hibiki Mananabe immediately pulled the string back with all his might and fired a blast of mystical energy that completely pierced through the cave's suffocating aura of death, looking just like an epic fairy technique he had seen before. The sky instantly lit up brightly from the unbelievable destructive power of that divine tier weapon. Venekun could only stare in absolute awe, mind-blown that the legendary bow actually recognized Hibiki Mananabe's soul as its perfect vessel.
It turned out this epic success was being watched directly by two literal gods from another realm. Even the medicine god smiled with deep satisfaction, thrilled to see his magical investment pay off massively after spending so much time observing all the suffering the young man had been through.
Up in the Guardian realm, the god of magic actually questioned that decision for a second, but the medicine god just gave a gentle response. He placed his highest hopes on the fact that the destiny of the future now rested entirely in the hands of that hero.
Proving that guy right about his hidden potential, Hibiki, Lillian, and Jewel dashed through the forest to catch up with Claude. But out of nowhere, a vicious pack of wolves blocked their path.
Even though he hesitated to draw his bow at first, Hibiki finally listened to the system instructions coming from the calmly smiling cat. Suddenly, his eyes glowed a brilliant blue as his expert eye skill activated.
The system completely took over Hibiki's shaky mental state, locking onto every single wolf in front of him. It guaranteed 100% accuracy as his hand started glowing with some seriously deadly magical energy. As soon as the wolves dropped, Hibiki just froze in pure shock. He gripped his bow, totally terrified by how insanely destructive the magic he just unleashed actually was.
Not wanting to be left out, Lillian started gathering green energy and unleashed a massive root magic attack that absolutely crushed the remaining monsters. All Hibiki could do was give her a super awkward smile.
As they kept moving forward, Jewel noticed something super weird about how those attacks were coordinated. He figured out that the mastermind behind all this chaos was a legendary boss monster known as the Silver Diamond Wolf.
The presence of that boss wolf immediately reminded them of Evil, the mysterious maid who had been secretly watching from up in the trees, totally enjoying Hibiki and the gang suffering from a distance.
Meanwhile, Claude was completely exhausted. He was forced to his knees in front of the giant silver wolf, which was ready to pounce on him, right over a growing pool of blood on the ground.
Claude's mind drifted back to his past when the phantom of a white-haired fairy appeared right amidst the boss monster's howls. It totally shattered his concentration, slowly breaking down his mental defenses by bringing up old wounds of betrayal.
That daydream shattered when Claude recklessly charged forward with his spear, but he took a direct, brutal slash to his body that sent him flying, leaving him completely helpless after taking such a fatal counterattack.
Realizing Claude was in massive danger, Hibiki tried to attack but got blocked by a super strong shield. He had to prep an emergency teleportation spell right as a pillar of light started descending to save his friend's life.
Just as Claude was lying there helpless, a golden pillar of light suddenly dropped down and enveloped him. A guardian spirit began to manifest, giving him the strength to stand back up, grip his spear tightly, and gather some incredibly deadly light energy.
Hibiki could only stare in absolute awe from below as Claude shot up into the air. He used gravity magic to completely lock down the monster's movements, trapping the giant wolf within binding pillars.
With his critical strike fully prepped, Claude dove sharply through the clouds to smash right into the enemy's shield. It created a massive explosion that completely obliterated all of the enemy's defenses, leaving absolutely nothing behind.
Hibiki's jaw literally dropped when he saw the monster's head get severed. He immediately used his appraisal powers just to make 100% sure the target was actually dead and wouldn't try to ambush them again.
A status window suddenly popped up, revealing the hidden tragedy behind it all. Then, completely out of nowhere, Anastasia's spirit began to manifest right behind Hibiki after the curse binding the demon wolf's corpse shattered into pieces. After giving them a super peaceful smile, her spirit form slowly faded away into eternal particles of light as a final goodbye. Meanwhile, Hibiki started celebrating their victory with so much enthusiasm, finally free from all that heavy burden. Right when the light in his eyes returned to normal because his time limit was up, Claude just gave a weak smile and dropped to his knees. He deeply regretted his mistakes and confessed to putting the entire team in danger.
Claude's mind drifted back to his peaceful past, remembering how little Anastasia actually had an incredibly amazing talent for spirit magic since she was just a tiny kid.
But all that happiness vanished when Anastasia got corrupted by a dark curse. It forced Claude to endure the ultimate heartbreak of driving his spear right through his own best friend's chest just to stop the madness.
The flashback ended as Claude explained that the angry spirit inside the monster was actually targeting him all along. He just bowed his head in total resignation, waiting for Hibiki to hand down some severe punishment.
But totally exceeding his expectations, Hibiki stepped right up and firmly rejected that whole self-blame idea. He made it super clear that Claude didn't have to carry all that heavy burden by himself anymore.
Those genuine words made Claude immediately burst into tears of joy. After suffering for so long, he finally received the forgiveness he had been desperately craving from the absolute bottom of his heart.
After Claude swore an oath of absolute loyalty with a steady voice, Hibiki's physical condition finally hit its limit. He started stumbling around, fighting off sheer exhaustion after forcing out every last drop of his magic power for the day. Hibiki ended up letting out a tired laugh before passing out right into Claude's arms, who was quick enough to catch him. Meanwhile, way up above, the god was just sitting back and chilling, watching the two of them from a distance.
Up in the heavenly dimension, the gods were actually busy arguing and dodging responsibility for all the chaos. At the same time, the nervous little goddess over there was gearing up to confess the massive blunder she had made.
After finally collapsing from extreme exhaustion, Hibiki woke up in a super comfy bed. He was instantly greeted by a huge pile of system notifications, letting him know his level had skyrocketed after that crazy boss fight.
Hibiki's breathing steadied out a lot as his eyes widened. He saw Claude, Lillian, and the little cat fast asleep, completely safe around him without a single worrying scratch on them.
Once his energy was back to 100%, Hibiki flashed a massive smile and excitedly invited his friends to a huge feast. It was time to celebrate their deadly victory that had almost cost them their lives the other day.
On the flip side, Emalia was standing super stiffly at a luxurious but incredibly stressful royal banquet. She was completely surrounded by people who had tons of hidden agendas regarding her. Emalia's face instantly soured when that narcissist Verdelis suddenly walked up to her. He started dropping these cheap, cheesy pickup lines that literally made her stomach turn and made her want to run away on the spot.
Thanks to Verdelis' audacity, the tension cranked up even more when the Elf King delivered a fiery speech. He raised his hand to officially declare Verdelis as the new hero who would lead the kingdom's grand expedition.
Emalia's jaw hit the floor the second she heard her name suddenly announced as part of the hero's party. It was a totally one-sided decision made without her consent whatsoever, right in front of a massive public crowd.
Things got even messier when Verdelis suddenly dropped to one knee and proposed to Amalia right there on stage. All the guests erupted into massive applause, while the elf girl felt like her entire world was completely shattering into deep despair.
Meanwhile, Hibiki and his crew were just chilling and feeling super stuffed after finishing their feast, but the vibe slowly shifted to serious mode when they started talking about the next steps for their journey.
With a trembling voice, Hibiki poured his heart out. He admitted how much he missed Earth, but also how heavily it weighed on him to even think about leaving his precious friends behind in this incredibly dangerous alien world.
Finally, Hibiki clenched his fists with absolute determination. He resolved to find some kind of magical way to bring Claude and the rest of the gang back home to Earth with him someday.
みんなと別れないで元の世界に帰る方法を探そうと思っ
Seeing Hibiki's unplanned but pure sincerity, Claude immediately dropped to his knees to swear an oath of absolute loyalty. Hibiki just laughed it off, admitting his own recklessness while catching a serious scolding from the wise cat, Jewel.
Even though Jewel acted super prideful and looked away at first, he eventually yelled out his agreement to join them. It made Lillian so incredibly soft for him that she instantly scooped the tiny animal up into a tight, affectionate hug.
Back at the palace, Imalia was completely sick and tired of being used as a political pawn. She literally threw her noble dress on the floor and swapped it out for a much more practical adventurer's outfit, determined to seek her true freedom out there.
Imalia totally ignored her maid's worried crying and made up her mind to jump straight out the high palace window. She wanted to escape as far away as possible that very night from all those suffocating restrictions.
任せるわったくまさか依頼の内容が
The moment her feet landed smoothly on the ground, Amalia took a massive sigh of relief. She had finally broken free from the kingdom's chains and was totally ready to kick off a brand new adventure that would change her destiny forever. In a much darker place, a girl with bangs looked down in absolute terror while reporting to a magic mirror. Meanwhile, the mysterious mastermind started making moves since their favorite puppet had completely failed the mission. Suddenly, the girl's gaze shifted drastically. Her blue eyes flared up with a savage glow, followed by a truly terrifying psychopathic smile. It was as if she had already set up a massive disaster, just waiting to crush Hibiki in the near future.
Even though the dark promise to avenge yesterday's failure was still lingering, Lillian tried to lighten the mood. While they were chilling and looking out the peaceful bedroom window, she asked Hibiki about the world he originally came from.
Hibiki's mind drifted back to his past as he started sharing stories about his warm and loving family. Hearing this, it suddenly hit Claude just how much the people back in Hibiki's world must be missing his cheerful vibe right now.
でも今はリリアンやクロードも一緒だし
But that touching moment totally vanished when a super muscular guy walked up to praise Hibiki's victory. Though the guy ended up getting super frustrated because our hero's physique looked totally scrawny and weak compared to his.
The meathead got even more hyped up and started offering some insane physical training while flexing his muscles. Honestly, his ridiculous antics just annoyed everyone around him, and they all wanted to shut down his little flex fest immediately.
本日お呼びした要件ですが
Because of all the loud nonsense, Jewel didn't hesitate to literally freeze the guy solid. After dealing with him, she handed over the reward documents for the Firewolf quest. The payout was so massive that Hibiki's eyes practically popped out of his head.
With their pockets now stuffed with gold, the gang headed straight to Debbie's equipment shop. Debbie is this incredibly eccentric shop owner who welcomed them with some wildly flexible and enthusiastic body movements. Claude's mind briefly wandered back to the dark days when he was locked up in prison. Sensing they needed something better, Debbie threw open the double doors to her secret weapon vault to offer them some seriously top-tier protection.
That gloomy flashback ended when Hibiki tried on a green tunic infused with wind magic. Not wanting to be outdone, Lillian cast a spell that instantly transformed her outfit into a full-blown witch's robe, complete with a matching staff.
The excitement died down instantly the moment Debbie dropped the price tag. Hibiki's face went completely pale. Meanwhile, Claude actually thought it was a total steal to get such high-level magical gear for that amount.
Eventually, Claude settled on this really badass white and blue armor. While he was checking it out, Hibiki activated his appraisal skill to double-check the defensive stats on the armor's stomach guard.
それで武器の方は
It turned out the spear could manipulate magnetism to rain down sharp energy attacks. Hibiki was absolutely blown away by how terrifyingly strong his teammates' new weapon would be in close quarters combat. Hearing Hibiki's incredibly detailed analysis, Debbie just froze and almost fell over backward. She completely did not expect the guy standing in front of her to possess the super rare level 5 appraisal skill.
Hibiki's thoughts drifted back to the moment the god winked at him. He couldn't help but feel a bit salty because that deity never even bothered to tell him that his appraisal skill was actually something incredibly special.
He snapped out of it when Debbie quickly jumped in to offer them a horse-drawn carriage fully stocked with supplies. It was such a sweet deal that Hibiki agreed immediately with a massive smile, relieved that all their equipment prep was finally done.
With all their preparations sorted, the crew headed out to an open field. It was time for Hibiki to cast his recovery magic and finally free Claude from the chains of that agonizing purple curse.
Hibiki raised his right hand high into the air, and suddenly a massive, blinding pillar of yellow light shot up. Out of the light, an adorable magical rabbit named Carbuncle happily bounded out. But instead of putting the little guy to work right away, Hibiki and Lillian totally got distracted. They caught Carbuncle midair, squished its cute little cheeks, and giggled as they tickled the poor, helpless bunny's face. While they were busy playing around, Claude was out there suffering. His body was still bound by those heavy, glowing blue magical chains, and the wolf beast man was sweating bullets, trying his best to hold back his explosive anger. Because of that, Bene delivered a solid smack right to Hibiki's head, leaving him totally dumbfounded. That made Carbuncle stop playing, while Lillian cheered happily, seeing them finally get back on track to cast the curse-breaking spell.
Their goofy banter stopped dead in its tracks when a dense, dark red, fiery aura suddenly erupted from Claude's body. His eyes glowed fiercely, and Benny let out an angry screech after sensing the terrifying dark energy leaking out.
Feeling pretty intimidated by that intense killing intent, Carbuncle let out a long sigh and began chanting some high-tier magic. The gem on its forehead started radiating this incredibly beautiful magical pink light.
As soon as the chant was done, two magical hands materialized and grabbed the cursed chains. They pulled with all their might, making Carbuncle's little face turn completely red from the effort, while Claude watched the whole thing in absolute shock. The moment the pain vanished, Claude immediately bowed his head in deep respect. He stared at his own hands in awe, while Hibiki just smiled happily, relieved to see the warrior finally healed and free from his torment. Getting showered with praise, Carbuncle could only blush and rub its little nose. Then, the cute spirit prepared to head home, having done a seriously awesome job removing the curse from Claude's body. Out of nowhere, the adorable creature vanished in a puff of smoke in the blink of an eye. It left Hibiki standing there looking super confused, just staring at the hand he had used to pet the magical bunny's soft fur. The very next day brought a whole new kind of suffering when an extreme heat wave hit the city. The temperatures spiked to a scorching 39 degrees. Claude was reduced to laying limply on the floor, while Hibiki slumped over, completely drained of energy. Hibiki jokingly suggested they should just shave off all of Claude's fur. The proud warrior froze in absolute terror, imagining how weird and incredibly embarrassing it would be if everyone saw him totally bald. Thank goodness Lillian stepped in and confiscated the scissors while Claude was still shaking in fear. Her magic staff began to glow brightly as she prepared a much more reasonable, cooling solution for them. Thanks to Lillian's magic, she created these floating blue water orbs that acted just like air conditioning. Claude immediately hugged one of the orbs with pure relief, while Benet smiled, clearly satisfied with the result. But the chill vibes were ruined when Tanya, the tavern maid, suddenly crawled in and collapsed from exhaustion. She blinked weakly, asking for help, prompting Hibiki, who was just enjoying a nice soak, to rush over and assist her. Seeing her in that state, Hibiki quickly cast a cooling bubble spell to wash over Tanya. The magic instantly refreshed her, finally allowing the poor girl to catch her breath after nearly passing out from the extreme heat wave. Once Tanya was back on her feet and relaxing comfortably inside the bubble, Hibiki gave an awkward smile. He explained that he was going to head out to find some physical gear that could provide a more permanent cooling effect. Since Claude suddenly got dizzy again from the heat exhaustion, Hibiki decided to hit the streets with Bene, who eagerly jumped up to volunteer. Lillian stayed behind to keep an eye on the rest of their friends. The sun was literally baking the streets, leaving the entire city completely deserted. Hilariously enough, Bene, who was acting so tough just a minute ago, ended up fast asleep inside Hibiki's backpack while they were walking through town. Out of nowhere, Ajarathan made the super dramatic entrance, doing a full split.
Hibiki was just standing there, jaw dropped, watching the guy proudly adjust his glasses without breaking a single drop of sweat in this scorching weather.
It turned out his secret was the custom cooling suit he was showing off. This little leak of information totally fired up Hibiki's ambition to go ask the guild staff about finding similar magical items so his team wouldn't melt.
Driven by that goal, he dashed straight to the city archives to track down the Cloak of Eternal Spring. Ajarathan just gave a satisfied smile, seeing Hibiki so fired up, while Bene continued to sleep soundly in the bag, completely unbothered.
Once he got there, Hibiki immediately bombarded Jewel at the reception desk with questions about the location of a rare flower. Jewel checked the guidebook and warned him that the route was extremely difficult, before eventually offering to guide him herself.
Jewel's decision made Hibiki's mind wander back to the time when Lillian had taken care of him with so much affection. That warm memory of them eating together felt like it paid off when they finally arrived at the stunning flower field.
His daydream faded when Lillian and Claude handed him a mysterious gift bag as a sweet surprise to welcome them back. Lillian grinned widely as she watched Hibiki stare at the gift, completely overwhelmed with gratitude.
Suddenly, Hibiki's jaw hit the floor. He had casually checked Lillian's status screen right in the middle of that touching moment and noticed something incredibly bizarre.
Hibiki revealed that Lillian's class had officially evolved into a sage, all thanks to their intense training. Claude immediately congratulated her, while Hibiki enthusiastically broke down the whole leveling up process for them.
It turned out Lillian wasn't the only one getting stronger. Bene, the white cat spirit, immediately demanded a similar magical upgrade. Hibiki channeled his green magic until Bene's body glowed with vibrant energy, and then the spirit bowed respectfully.
Their preparations were looking solid as Claude showed off his new temperature-regulating green cloak, which was crafted from the flowers Hibiki had worked so hard to get. Lillian even did a happy little spin to show off her new robe, which looked incredibly comfortable for adventuring.
But chaos broke out of nowhere when Balls showed up, screaming and trying to force Hibiki to train with him. It made Claude glare daggers at the guy, trying to hold back a rage that looked ready to explode.
Thankfully, Jewel acted fast and broke up the fight by literally freezing both of them with her ice magic. Once things finally calmed down, the team set off in their horse-drawn carriage toward the north, with the townsfolk happily waving them goodbye.
Meanwhile, in another location, civilians were running for their lives from a terrifying attack by red-eyed zombies. Luckily, some quick-thinking warriors managed to calm the situation down after Kyoko sliced through the monsters with blinding speed.
This mysterious group called the Corpse Killers, led by Taiki, was seen having a serious discussion in the shadows. Kyoko asked about their next move, and her gaze turned deadly sharp the second she mentioned Hibiki Manabe's name as their primary target.
Fueled by a bitter grudge from their past, Kyoko swore she would relentlessly hunt Hibiki down. Even though her team looked exhausted, the girl's fierce determination to track down her cousin was a clear sign that some major danger was looming on the horizon. When the weather suddenly turned super extreme, Claude ended up shivering so hard his whole body was shaking. It was hilarious, but meant Hibiki had to go out of his way to take care of his commander, who apparently couldn't handle the cold at all. That peaceful vibe was instantly shattered when Claude let out a massive sneeze, complete with a comically exploding snot bubble. This gross little display totally annoyed Lillian's cat, who gave the commander the most epic look of pure disgust.
As soon as the weather cleared up, Hibiki wasted no time and immediately started practicing his arrow magic. He took careful aim and unleashed a brightly glowing bolt of magical energy straight at a wolf monster that had been stalking them.
But Claude just had to crush Hibiki's spirit, bluntly telling him that his skills were nothing more than a rookie adventurer's illusion and far from being actually great. This was a total buzzkill, especially since Lillian had just been showering him with praises.
Their journey continued through a gorgeous, lush green valley via a horse-drawn carriage. Unfortunately, the bumpy ride was absolutely brutal, making Hibiki so incredibly motion-sick that he looked like he was going to throw up right then and there.
Hibiki's face literally turned blue as he desperately tried to hold back the nausea creeping up his throat. Seeing their poor travel buddy act so weird and look so ghastly
totally freaked out Lillian and her cat. Unable to hold it in any longer, Hibiki ended up puking a bright rainbow-colored liquid. As soon as the carriage stopped, this ridiculous scene made Lillian scream hysterically because of how bizarrely colorful the vomit was.
As a result, the group was forced to pull over. Claude carried a still weak Hibiki down so he could wash his face in the nearby lake, completely unaware of the massive danger lurking just beneath that refreshing water.
The moment he touched it, the water just evaporated into thin air, and a whole swarm of slime suddenly popped out from the ground. Lillian was totally shocked, but Claude just gave a subtle smirk, clearly seeing this as a brand new training opportunity. Instead of helping, Claude turned the ambush into an impromptu training session by casually handing Hibiki a lit torch. Still dizzy from earlier, Hibiki could only stand there utterly dumbfounded, holding this makeshift weapon in front of the monsters.
Left with no choice, Hibiki charged at the slime swarm, swinging the torch wildly. Honestly, he was super annoyed at his own commander for forcing him to fight in such an incredibly disadvantageous condition.
Hibiki quickly got exhausted and ended up collapsing. To make matters worse, a slime took advantage of his weakness, leaping up and completely enveloping his face. He couldn't breathe and was struggling to move and save himself. In that dire moment, Hibiki's mind flashed back to his past, remembering Amalia's cheerful smile and the warm memories of eating meals with his friends. Those beautiful memories sparked an explosive burst of determination in his heart, making him refuse to just give up and die. His body temperature suddenly spiked, causing his magical energy to gather at an insane speed. A burst of flames erupted from his hands, forcing the slime to immediately let go of his face before it got roasted alive. He snapped back to reality when his flames successfully pushed the slimes back, but against all odds, they merged into one giant entity. Lillian was scared half to death, seeing the absolutely massive size of their new enemy. Hibiki tried to cast a spell, looking all cool and stylish, but all that came out was a tiny, candle-sized flame. This incredibly embarrassing moment completely shattered his pride right in front of the giant monster that was ready to swallow him whole. Thanks to his blunder, Hibiki ended up totally drained and sprawled out on the ground, while Lillian tried her best to cheer him up. Seeing how beat up they were, Chloe finally decided to set up camp for the night so they could get some well-deserved rest. As dusk settled over the camp, Hibiki used whatever energy he had left to chop vegetables and grill some meat. Interestingly enough, he used his tiny fire magic to light up the lanterns, which was honestly a super practical way to get some lighting. Beneath the gorgeous starry sky, Claude started sharing the legend of Terra Dinas, a mysterious, unconquered underground city. The serious campfire talk immediately grabbed the attention of a wide-awake Hibiki. Hibiki's eyes widened in shock at the sheer weight of that challenge, but Claude, looking dead serious, promised to guide him to be the very first person to reach it and carve out a new piece of history that the world would remember forever. Later that night, after their long chat, Hibiki checked his system screen and saw a whole new lineup of skills. His eyes lit up with excitement before he spent some time quietly reflecting by himself and finally getting ready to sleep. The next morning, a bright and sunny view welcomed the group as they arrived at a refugee camp. However, the mood instantly turned grim when they noticed the incredibly exhausted and hollow looks in the villagers' eyes. Claude listened intently as a young village boy explained that their home had been completely overrun by a horde of undead, and to make matters worse, the guild hadn't sent a single ounce of help yet. Hibiki processed the crazy news about a badass beastman woman who bravely fought off the walking corpses to save all the villagers, who were now terrified and seeking shelter in the refugee camp. Claude initially wanted to reroute for safety, but the sincere plea of a little kid and the sheer determination of his new companion forced the wolfman to actually consider taking the highly risky shortcut. What a crazy commander! Claude actually decided to use the zombie-infested village as a training ground so Hibiki could power level quickly, even though his student's face instantly went pale and broke out in a cold sweat. Claude just laughed heartily, full of energy, as he started lecturing about combat experience.
It was as if the creepy haunted village in the distance was nothing more than a fun playground for someone as overpowered as him.
Claude immediately readied his sharp spear when he spotted the horde of undead crawling up the hillside. He tracked every single movement of the enemy with an intensely sharp and watchful gaze.
Right in front of the village gates, they stumbled upon several massive excavated pits. This forced Claude to order everyone to stay on high alert, realizing the area was intentionally rigged with all sorts of deadly traps.
Panicking at the sight of the walking dead, Hibiki ended up running blindly, tripping a tripwire for a crossbow trap, and tumbling right into a pit that almost skewered his small body with its sharp spikes.
Suddenly, a giant boulder came rolling right at Hibiki. Luckily, Fauna showed up in the nick of time to hold back that crushing weight, flashing a confident smile that totally reassured the startled group.
Walking along casually, Fauna shared the story of how she got stuck there and decided to help the refugees because she just couldn't stand by and watch the chaos caused by the relentless zombie attacks.
The woman gave a flirty wink as she boldly admitted that she was the one who set up all those death traps. Hibiki could only stare in utterly confused shock at this unexpected joke from his savior.
Fauna's gaze sharpened as she explained that the zombies here were moving in a highly coordinated way. It was as if some powerful figure was pulling the strings from the shadows, organizing their incredibly neat attack patterns. Getting way too cocky because he had strong fighters by his side, Hibiki carelessly took another step and fell right back into the exact same pit trap, even though Fauna had just yelled at him to watch out.
He fell down so many times that his system actually awarded him an embarrassing new title. Claude just facepalmed, completely at a loss for words, watching his student act so ridiculous right in front of their new ally. Eventually, Fauna stepped in to teach Hibiki how to focus his detection skills on the ground to read the traps. It was a crucial trait that the young guy immediately absorbed with a super serious expression. Hibiki's eyes practically sparkled when he successfully pinpointed the trap locations with perfect precision. He quickly threw a thumbs up to Fauna, feeling way more prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The group finally reached an old, sturdy-looking stone church to use as a temporary safe haven. They stepped inside cautiously, scanning every corner of the room that felt incredibly silent and chillingly cold. Hibiki's instincts led him to a bizarre discovery. One of the sacred gem slots was completely missing from the magical array of the compass of the gods that had been sitting in that old church for ages. Hibiki pointed out the empty slot to Claude. It was a shocking revelation that perfectly explained why the village's magical defenses had collapsed, allowing dark energy to just waltz right in without any resistance. Their conversation was abruptly cut off when the church bell suddenly rang violently on its own. It shattered the silence of the night, draining the color from everyone's faces as they realized something incredibly dangerous was approaching them. That bell chime turned out to be a summoning spell that made the ground shake violently. Pure panic set in as hundreds of walking corpses began clawing their way out of the dirt, completely surrounding the entire church area. Realizing their lives were on the line, Claude quickly covered his ears before darting forward without a single ounce of hesitation, slashing down every zombie that tried to block their escape route from the sacred building. The situation was getting super critical, so Claude and Fauna desperately held the doors to keep the others safe. Meanwhile, they ordered Hibiki and Lillian to climb the tower and find out what was causing this whole mess. Unable to just sit there and play defense, Claude and Fauna eventually busted outside to proactively slaughter the zombie horde, trying to take the pressure off the church entrance that was getting completely overwhelmed. Once they reached the top, Hibiki and Lillian were totally baffled to see the giant bell ringing violently on its own, as if some weird magical force was violently forcing it to swing. Up on a high cliff, Evil smirked wickedly while spying on Hibiki through his magic mirror. He was definitely getting intrigued, watching his new prey scramble to clean up the massive mess he had orchestrated. Hibiki hesitated for a second when his appraisal skill came up empty, so he started meticulously inspecting the wooden floorboards, absolutely convinced there was a hidden secret behind that mysterious ringing bell.
何これ
Thanks to his new skill, Hibiki finally uncovered a magic mirror that was hiding the reflection of a phantom bell. It turned out this exact item was the main trigger, resurrecting hundreds of walking corpses all over the village.
Hibiki immediately aimed a light arrow to smash it, but his face instantly twisted in frustration when he saw his attack bounced right back, completely blocked by an incredibly tough and solid protective barrier. A massive explosion ended up blowing the roof right off the tower because their combined attack was just too powerful. This scared the living daylights out of Ivel, who had been enjoying the show, as he watched his master plan fail spectacularly.
All the zombies instantly collapsed in unison the moment the mirror shattered. They reverted back to being lifeless corpses since their magical connection had been completely severed. Hibiki carried a drained Lillian out of the tower's rubble since she had used up all her energy. They were warmly greeted at the bottom by Fauna, who was feeling an overwhelming sense of relief.
The villagers gathered around to express their gratitude for saving their lives, and Fauna proudly pointed to Hibiki as the main hero who managed to end the horrifying crisis in their village.
Claude was pretty suspicious about who the mastermind behind all this was, but Fauna calmed him down, saying that any further investigation would be left entirely in the hands of the Adventurers Guild. Hibiki could only pout when Fauna teased him about his appearance, right before their group geared up again to continue their long journey toward their ultimate destination, Terra Dinas. But hidden in the silence of the night near a campfire, Evil sat brooding and plotting his next trap. He had realized that Hibiki was a genuine threat who needed to be eliminated as quickly as possible. The chief god sits calmly on his throne, staring intensely into the distance. He totally knows there's a massive challenge lurking in the shadows, ready to block Hibiki's journey real soon. Meanwhile, in a super quiet, starry space, a mysterious girl is sleeping soundly. She's just waiting for her destiny to intertwine with the power of the god, who's constantly watching from his throne without missing a single beat. Things get super tense when the fortress guard harshly scolds Claude for recklessly bringing kids along. This all goes down while dusk is settling over the heavily guarded, solid stone fortress, adding to the dramatic vibe.
Lillian instantly explodes with anger because her brother is being looked down upon. The poor guard is left totally bewildered by this fierce argument that suddenly blows up right in front of the main gate, making the whole situation incredibly awkward.
But Hibiki stays totally chill and just hands over their official guild permit. The guard has zero choice but to let them in, even though he looks super annoyed and keeps pouting, trying to hold back his frustration.
New subplot alert. Somewhere else, Imalia is walking all alone through a dark night forest. But honestly, her steps feel so light after she pictures Hibiki's warm smile, which gives her an unbelievable mental boost.
Imalia glares intensely at the necklace Ivel left behind. She completely makes up her mind to end this feud with her former best friend before dawn breaks in the east tomorrow morning, even though her heart still feels super heavy about it.
The glowing necklace immediately guides Amalia straight toward the enemy fortress. This happens right after a fleeting memory of Ivel's past smile crosses her mind, which is currently a total mess of deep doubts and confusion.
Meanwhile, back at the inn, Claude is busy carrying a massive stack of documents. He keeps reminding the team that their exploration of the northern dungeon needs to be planned out meticulously so they don't miss a single detail.
Hibiki feels a bit hesitant at first, but Claude reassures him with a calm tone, saying that all the information they've gathered is more than enough to map out the absolute safest route for them.
Surprisingly, Lillian enthusiastically raises her hand and volunteers to take charge of writing down their itinerary. She really wants to prove that she's a super reliable and useful member of the team.
Claude dives right into detailing the layout of the dark and creepy dungeon floors. This instantly shifts the vibe in the inn room to something way more serious compared to when they first arrived.
It gets super late into the night as Hibiki and Claude double-check their supplies in the room. They feel so relieved because all their preparations for tomorrow's departure seem totally solid and complete without a single thing missing.
Suddenly, Claude's face gets super tense when he realizes a fatal mistake.
They completely forgot to pack spare underwear for their long trip into the northern dungeon, which is guaranteed to be exhausting. Hibiki's eyes widen in absolute disbelief because his hygiene standards are totally offended. He even squeezes his eyes shut in frustration, flat out rejecting Claude's offer to use cleaning magic as their most practical solution. Making things worse, Claude offers up his own loincloth with a creepy smile. This makes Hibiki scream hysterically, feeling like his sheer dignity is being actively threatened right in front of his eyes by such a disgusting, old-school solution. Hibiki's hopes are completely crushed when the Sapo-chan system confirms that modern underwear isn't sold in the local market at all. His body instantly goes limp and helpless as he's forced to accept this incredibly embarrassing reality.
Veen finally speaks up and scolds her master, reminding Hibiki that he literally has amazing magical powers to duplicate any item he wants super easily and in no time flat.
Bursting with confidence, Hibiki casts his copy-paste magic until a golden light flashes. Then, out of nowhere, hundreds of blue underpants start raining from the sky, completely flooding their room and making a huge mess.
Cutting back to the creepy forest, Amalia finally arrives at the outer courtyard of the old fortress after gathering her courage. She's totally ready to face the enemy from her past, who has been haunting her thoughts and dreams every single night.
Ivel's cold smirk welcomes Amalia's arrival, and she's accompanied by a ferocious giant wolf. This beast looks ready to tear apart anyone who dares to trespass on its territory in the middle of the dead, silent, and terrifying night.
Even though Amalia's magic arrow explodes right on target, the wolf's deafening roar actually shatters the stone floor and blasts her backward. It just goes to show that her enemy's power this time is absolutely terrifying and lethal.
Amalia's hunt finally pays off when she manages to corner Ivel in a narrow alley, immediately pointing her weapon at her with a super intense glare.
But Ivel just laughs mockingly and calls Amalia way too naive. The elf is left totally frozen because her good intentions are met with such cruel mockery. Wasting zero time, Amalia shows off their old friendship necklace. It turns out she secretly used it as a tracking device to pinpoint Ivel's secret hideout.
But in a totally unexpected twist, Ivel crushes the necklace into pieces. She then immediately commands her giant white wolf to lunge forward and brutally attack Amalia. After that vicious attack, Amalia desperately bites her own finger until it bleeds to activate a high-level wind cutter spell. Meanwhile, Ivel just stands there watching her with a super condescending smile. Sadly, the green wind slash bounces right back when Ivel raises her magic shield. Amalia's strongest attack ends up turning around and hitting her directly.
As a result, Amalia instantly collapses, enduring incredible pain all over her body. Ivel just stares at her coldly from behind her shield without a single ounce of pity.
Once her victim is completely helpless, Ivel vanishes in a flash of purple teleportation light. Meanwhile, on the flip side, Hibiki is actually super busy handling their registration at the guild's reception desk. Lillian hands over a stack of their itinerary documents with hopeful eyes, waiting for the female receptionist to finish reviewing all the routes they've so carefully mapped out.
Luckily, their planning is considered so flawless that the receptionist smiles in satisfaction. She finally grants official permission for Hibiki's party to start exploring the notoriously dangerous dungeon area.
With confident steps, they head straight for the dark dungeon entrance, totally ready to kick off their secret hunt behind those massive stone walls. As they walk down the corridor, Claude keeps lecturing Hibiki not to rely too much on his system map. He insists that Hibiki needs to start training his own combat instincts if he wants to survive down there. Hibiki suddenly panics when his blue notification screen starts glitching out. His magic signal is weakening because of the dense energy interference inside the dungeon, which is exactly what Claude just warned him about. Claude immediately yells at him, making it crystal clear that losing focus for even a second in a place like this means instant death for a beginner who isn't on high alert. Meanwhile, up in the divine realm, the god of magic is just chilling when he suddenly gets choked by the goddess.
Apparently, she's beyond annoyed with her co-worker's antics. Waving her hand in disgust, the goddess starts ranting. She's genuinely worried watching Hibiki struggles, feeling like he's probably just chasing after false hope. But the god of magic just brushes it off casually. In his eyes, letting Hibiki make his own choices is the absolute right of a human, and nobody should interfere with that. He even flashes a super mysterious smile, hinting that the method to return to one's original world is actually a secret that everyone intentionally forgot.
However, that serious vibe shatters instantly when the goddess invites him to drink tea with the god of medicine. This makes the god of magic literally jump for joy, totally unable to contain his excitement. The daydreaming stops when Hibiki starts trembling, pointing at a puddle of blue liquid on the floor that he thinks is a death trap. Funny enough, his system immediately tells him that it's completely harmless.
Hilariously, the real danger actually drops from the ceiling in the form of a giant slime monster. It scares Hibiki so much that he jumps back and almost crashes right into the tunnel wall behind him.
Feeling totally embarrassed from being teased, Hibiki finally manages to calm down. He quickly casts a magic circle to blast a scorching fireball right at the squishy monster, threatening his life.
As soon as the slime is blasted to bits, their progress is halted by a super sturdy stone wall that pops up via a system notification. Even Claude's spear bounces right off when he tries to smash it.
Realizing they need an area of effect attack way stronger than just physical weapons, Hibiki suggests Lillian step up. Meanwhile, Vene calms her down, giving her full support to unleash her true abilities.
That massive explosion finally blows a new path wide open for them. The whole party immediately rushes down the dark stairs to venture even deeper into the underground dungeon.
Claude suddenly freezes when the system detects danger. Right on cue, 3 giant bees emerge from the darkness and viciously dive-bomb the group out of absolutely nowhere.
Hibiki instantly aims his automagic bow, but his eyes widen in shock. The system shows his accuracy stats plummeting because his divine powers are slowly being blocked by the dungeon's atmosphere.
Claude starts lecturing again about the dangers of traps, but Hibiki is just standing there frozen with a blank stare. He's way too panicked seeing the system notification telling him that all his powers are drastically weakening.
Getting annoyed at Hibiki spacing out, Claude snaps at him. Finally, the poor guy admits with a pale face that all of his reliable magic skills have completely vanished in this place.
Hibiki's shoulders slump in defeat, feeling like he's just a burden to the team. But Lillian quickly walks over and gives him a sweet smile to comfort her totally heartbroken new friend.
Claude wisely chimes in, saying that even a missed shot is still useful for suppressing the enemy's movements. Vene also tells him not to hesitate to rely on their combined strength from now on.
Hibiki cries tears of joy with a huge smile on his face. He feels so incredibly grateful to finally have genuine friends he considers his own family in this unfamiliar world.
But that touching moment is instantly ruined when a demonic smirk creeps onto Claude's face. He squeezes Hibiki's shoulder so hard that the poor guy screams in pain, catching a seriously bad feeling about what's next.
Claude straight up declares a brutally intense manual physical training session. He wants to make sure Hibiki's combat instincts stay razor sharp, even though he's lost all the magic assistance from his divine system.
Meanwhile, far away, in a super quiet village, Imalia finally slowly opens her eyes with a weary gaze. She had passed out from the severe injuries she took after her crushing defeat earlier. The moment she remembers the face of Ivel, who ruthlessly betrayed her, the elf girl immediately forces herself to stand up, breathing heavily. She swears to do absolutely whatever it takes to stop her former best friend's evil ambitions right now.
The elf girl went off to stop something while Hibiki was busy training in the dungeon. But man, he had the worst luck. He got blown away by an explosion after failing to shoot a super agile rabbit.
Thank goodness Lillian immediately stepped in and cast a net spell to absolutely destroy that monster. Though Vene the cat just shook her head, totally thinking that using that much magic was way overkill.
Looking at the monster's remains, Claude actually praised Hibiki's rapidly improving combat reflexes. Hibiki just smiled proudly and admitted that he was actually just borrowing Claude's techniques using his magic.
スキルの貸し借りが可能になるというとんでもなく
Out of nowhere, Claude threw a rock to trigger a deadly teleportation trap. Luckily, his sharp instincts saved them from a total disaster that almost wiped out the entire team right there in that dark hallway.
Lillian was literally shaking with fear watching it happen, while Hibiki's mind drifted back to that time he screamed in agony while being chased by a giant boulder. After all that crazy action, they finally decided to take a breather near the fire.
But their cozy campfire break got interrupted by Veni whining non-stop about being hungry. Hibiki could only let out a defeated sigh and give in to the greedy little cat's demands.
Hibiki ended up using his copy magic to manifest a plate of fresh sandwiches right out of a puff of smoke. The second the cat saw the delicious food, she devoured it completely, not leaving a single crumb behind.
Hibiki actually started laughing like a maniac just imagining an endless pile of gold. But the system immediately slapped him with a harsh warning. That instantly shut him up, since he was terrified of getting hit with some heavy ethical penalty.
Hibiki just laughed nervously and quickly changed the subject to the enemies on the 10th floor. Meanwhile, a now full Vinay started bragging about how she once obliterated a whole pack of wolf monsters with zero effort.
After Claude told everyone to go to sleep, Hibiki was still wide awake in his sleeping bag. He recklessly decided to experiment with his copy magic because his massive thirst for power totally overpowered his sleepiness that night.
The noisy system notifications ended up waking Claude up. Hibiki instantly broke into a cold sweat when he saw his teammates staring at him in pure shock in the middle of the quiet, dark night.
Luckily, the system then clarified that stolen skills couldn't be transferred to anyone else. Hibiki finally breathed a massive sigh of relief because his mental burden of becoming a total cheat monster felt a little lighter now. Instead of getting mad, Claude just gave this terrifying smirk and showed off his insane agility. He was actually super pumped and forced Hibiki to copy all of his combat skills right then and there without giving him a single second to rest. Claude intentionally unleashed his killing intent just to trigger his new student's survival instincts. He chose a seriously sadistic teaching method just so Hibiki's skill mastery process would go way faster than normal.
Lillian, who was absolutely furious that her sleep got disturbed, instantly froze Claude solid with an ice storm. Right after that, she went back to snoring peacefully, completely ignoring the fact that her teammate was now a rigid ice statue.
The next day, Hibiki was gliding incredibly fast through the 10th floor hallway thanks to that hellish training from the night before. Meanwhile, Claude could only watch with pride, seeing that his student had already mastered muscle memory control perfectly. Their confidence was through the roof when they reached the boss room, but the iron gates suddenly opened on their own and spat out a group of bloodied adventurers who had just suffered a brutal attack inside.
Panicking, Hibiki and Claude immediately dashed forward to help the victims. Sadly, they didn't realize that a deadly threat was already waiting in the darkness, ready to ambush them at any second.
Lillian started casting a spell as smoke billowed from the tightly shut iron doors, while Hibiki focused on activating his magic ring so its healing light could quickly envelop the severely injured victims.
But as soon as the adventurer regained consciousness, he described the terrifying number of enemies waiting inside. This made Claude instantly demand an explanation, while Hibiki's jaw just dropped in pure anxiety. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, there was this mysterious purple-haired girl casually walking around while touching a gem on a wolf's forehead. Turns out, she was the one intentionally provoking the monsters to make them way more savage.
As a result, the Egyptian deity watching over Hibiki's fate panicked like crazy, but instead of helping, his partner just splashed hot tea right in his face, making him look absolutely ridiculous. So, when the team finally stepped inside, Hibiki's eyes widened in sheer amazement at the dense forest right inside the room. And this was even after Claude had warned him that this biome was actually a total death trap for them. But Hibiki didn't just stand there. He immediately activated his mapping skill, popping up a blue holographic screen in front of him. However, his eyes practically bulged out when he analyzed the enemy levels. They were completely off the charts. Unexpectedly, Claude and Lillian took down the two decoy wolves incredibly easily using wind magic. For a brief moment, it made the whole forest vibe feel totally safe and peaceful.
Since that initial attack failed, a giant ball of vines suddenly shot out from the darkness at high speed. It scared Hibiki half to death, making him run for his life just as he was about to grab his bow.
But right when Lillian tripped and was about to get smashed by the vines, Hibiki recklessly reached out to save her. He did it even though his own face was pale as a ghost, staring down the deadly threat right in front of him.
Because of that reckless move, Hibiki ended up getting violently dragged away by the vines through the thick forest. Claude was too late to catch him and could only stare helplessly at the disappearing drag marks, feeling absolutely devastated.
Thankfully, Claude acted fast and activated a glowing secret seal. He used that power as an automatic tracking compass to pinpoint Hibiki's exact location while he was being kidnapped by the monster.
On the flip side, Hibiki, who had fallen upside down, started feeling incredibly threatened because his AI system was blaring emergency warnings about a high-level predator approaching him.
The impact was immediate. Hibiki's breath hitched as a red status screen popped up, and the silver emerald wolf revealed itself. It radiated such intense killing intent that his legs turned to jelly, realizing just how massive the level gap between them really was.
After dodging that surprise attack with a roll, Hibiki ended up getting trapped when a wall of vines erupted from the ground. It formed a giant dome that completely blocked the exit, locking him inside with the savage beast.
What made it even more horrifying was that Hibiki's legs suddenly got tangled in the vines, forcing him to crawl in pure desperation. Meanwhile, the wolf monster actually started transforming into something way more terrifying, ready to tear him to shreds.
Hibiki noticed the monster's personal space skill in action. From the outside, Claude kept pounding on the wooden barrier and throwing his spear at it, but he still completely failed to pierce through that absolute defense.
Hibiki's heart pounded like crazy as the giant wolf lunged forward. He scrambled back in terror until Venice screamed at him to immediately cast his summoning magic to call for emergency backup.
But instead of they, a black cat named Kate Sith showed up looking super chill. Then, he unleashed a pillar of light magic that instantly locked down the monster's movements, leaving Hibiki completely stunned.
The moment the star symbol lit up, Kate Sith implanted the secret of contract magic right into Hibiki's eyes. Then, his figure suddenly vanished, just as his master started nodding in understanding.
The monster instantly shattered its cage of light, making Hibiki run away in fear for a second. But then he stopped, raised his hand, and activated the brand new contract magic he had just learned.
Thanks to that new contract connection, a blindingly bright light pierced through the outer barrier, and Claude successfully teleported inside. Spear in hand, he was now fully ready to fight and protect his master.
Hibiki clenched his fists as his levels flowed straight into Claude's body. It created a radiant glow, signaling an extreme power transfer, meant to take down the high-tier monster standing right in front of them.
Claude leaped incredibly high and unleashed a massive spear of light attack that triggered a huge wind explosion. The monster was instantly obliterated, and Claude landed perfectly with a totally triumphant smile.
Lillian and Claude immediately ran over after the barrier shattered. However, Hibiki's attention was drawn to a mysterious purple stone fragment lying on the ground, and he quickly picked it up.
His eyes widened in shock when Ivil's arrogant voice echoed from the purple stone. Hibiki's hands froze as he realized he had just walked right into a cunning trap.
Cold sweat poured down his face as a teleportation magic circle appeared and ensnared his body. To make matters worse, his system failed to access the escape command because the magical hierarchy of that stone was actually on a whole other level. Because the dimensional pull was so insanely strong, the system was forced to drain Hibiki's vitality and sacrifice his stats. Even his guardian deity seal started burning away just to resist this absolutely forced kidnapping process. Hibiki managed to open his eyes and smiled in relief, thinking he was finally safe. But suddenly, his body started glitching out weirdly before he was completely swallowed by the dimension right in front of Lillian's eyes. The mysterious girl's red eye slowly opened in the empty dimension. She gave this superior smile, looking like she had been waiting a very long time for her prey to arrive, so she could finally kick off her true dark master plan.